Welcome back, movie fans, to another episode of The Movie Date with Rob and Matt, a podcast for people who like movies but don't want to be too smug about it. I'm Rob.
And I'm Matt.
And today we're going to be talking about two horror movies that I feel like couldn't be further apart from each other in a lot of ways.
Oh, in many ways, yeah. Haven't been in the seat in a minute, Rob.
I'm up here all the time.
You're up here all the time. You're up in your mad castle operating all the time. But yeah, we will be discussing the new Candyman,
and the new
Candyman, and Malignant.
Yeah,
the new James Wan. And right in time. This should drop in October.
Yeah.
So this will be right in time for you guys to pick it up, take a look at it. But before
it's one of those movies that is the title is an adjective, a negative adjective, like insidious.
Oh, it's a James Wan thing.
Sinister, malignant. It's gonna just be like evil,
bad,
not good,
terrible,
no good, or whatever.
Wretched. Wretched might already be one for all I know.
Whatever, but like it's one of those movies.
Yeah, where it's just you're running out of thesaurus at that point. You just got to really start thinking about it.
Soon movies are just gonna be named like after concepts. Like they're gonna
what's that Hugh Jackman one that looks like a Christopher Nolan movie?
Reminiscence.
I couldn't even reminisce that title if you told me.
Yeah.
Like I'm like,
it looks kind of bad, but I it could just be like it's just a weird cut trailer.
Yeah,
or whatever.
Well,
a lot of movies are like that, like the Edge of Tomorrow trailers. They're like that, and that's a great movie. So like,
yeah, I love Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah, when I see like those trailers, I'm like, oh, it looks so cringe. I would never see this.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is like you start thinking, would they just cobble everything in there that they could?
There are movies that are like that, where like so much stuff happens that you're like in the production or whatever that like the trailers do look real slapdash. It's usually usually if your trailer's not good, it's a good sign that your movie's not good. But there are like exceptions to that where like the trailers were bad, but like I ended up really digging the movie or whatever. Or I really feel like it's not fair to romantic comedies and stuff, or like earnest romance movies, because their trailers they're terrible.
Right. They have to tell you what they are.
Yeah. I saw the one with Lakeith Stanfield and what's her name?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I don't remember what it's called, but
I remember the trailers and I was being like, this looks so bad. And I was like, and it's not fair. It's not fair to the people who make those movies and work so hard on them. But I'm like, it is true though. They don't look good. They're not made to look good in a lot of ways. At least like they don't like the easiest job is like superhero movies.
Right. Like, dramas in general, like you kind of can get away with a lot.
You have to have like some sort of hook to build the trailer around or whatever. But like I was going back to like the first the last Force Awakens trailer or whatever, or I was going back to like that first Batman v Superman trailer or whatever, and how hyped it got me. It was like the first shot of Ben Affleck in the suit as Batman, and like the internet broke or whatever, and or like the Avengers Infinity War trailers and stuff. Like they're so compelling and they're so
and that's where you have to get somebody in the studio to be like, flex those editing muscles. This has to hit million views on YouTube before the end of the day.
Yeah, and also
it's got to.
It has the advantage of like you can use like the trailer, like in my opinion, like trailer music. I listen to a lot of that, especially when I'm exercising or something. Like it's great for like keeping the energy up. And I notice like all the trailer scores now are like, I'm not saying there aren't other types of trailer music, but it's always big, epic, grand, like you're doing it for like a big fantasy or superhero movie. Because that's where, like, if you listen to the music of those trailers or whatever, they're always like, they're big, they're huge. They've got like a giant dark choir in the background. Like, but if you listen to like the trailer of even just like a normal drama, they're really hard to make. But superhero trailers, you can kind of crank them out and they're always compelling usually.
Well, it has to be. It has to be big.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're doing a drama, like I imagine whatever the trailer will be for the new Martin Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon, filmed right over the border. It'll be, you want to fit like the time frame. So like have a little bit of a dusty acoustic guitar, maybe a little bit of violins. Dun, 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 dun. What do you need me for? Dun, 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 dun. It's time. Dun, dun, dun. That kind of thing, And
I love like watching trailers and like analyzing trailers and stuff.
I'm a sucker for that.
They're really it can be a lot of fun. Another company that's like their trailers are getting better is like A24. But they're getting to the point where like
You have no idea what.
Well, where I said also like that's not what the movie was.
Right.
But like, and I don't blame them because like your job is to make you interested in the movie. Like when I remember when I texted you about the Green Knight and I was like, well, look at this trailer. Look at how it's cut, and like every cut is like a sword swing or an axe swing,
And it's not
and
that
it's
movie.
not that movie at all.
And I was like, I am emotionally moved by this, and it is a very different kind of deal.
But like those are those.
But and for their horrors, they have to keep them so ambiguous because there's something very twisty that's going to happen.
Yeah. But I always end up really enjoying like superhero trailers are like the penultimate of trailerdom. It's the one like I remember listening to a composer or something being like, honestly, the movie that you want to get is usually like some big awesome superhero one, particularly like an Avengers or a Justice League or a movie where, because like he says like it's the most liberated.
Yeah.
Like you can't record something like, or like a Star Wars is another good example, or like a big like crossover blockbuster, like a Lord of the Rings or something. He goes, because you get the ultimate palette to paint with. Whereas if you're given a romantic comedy,
yeah, you have to fit the tone.
You can't put Duel of the Fates in romantic comedy.
I mean, you can't.
Or a battle,
but I would love to see it.
Or Battle of the Heroes, or or even like the music that plays when Flash is turning back time,
right?
Like this big you can't put that in like
you can't put that
like
in
an Edgar Wright movie,
right?
Or whatever. Like it's too niche. But he goes here. But like when you do one of these big movies, he's like you kind of get no rules are not thrown at you,
right?
Or whatever. Which is kind of, I imagine, like Alan Silvestri talked about like scoring the Avengers movies. He was like, it's so much more freeing. In a weird way.
Well, it's also, one could argue it's also just simplified because it's like, you know what to hit those down beats for the drama, and then those big upswings for swelling for victory.
Yeah. You remember how you talked?
Dun 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 dun. Dun.
You remember how you were talking about you watched a video how like a lot of comedies don't understand like cinematography or camera language? Yeah, it's like that. But like because when you listen to like a comedy movie and like the music, it's always like kind of lightly whimsical, stringy plucks or something. Like, and then I'm listening to the music, or like they'll just do a lot of soundtrack stuff where they just get like cool songs that people like or whatever. But he's like, I feel like there is no comedy that takes full advantage of like that, like the music and what part that plays in filmmaking. Right. I remember like watching Deadpool 2 and like they're fighting Juggernaut, and they made one of the pieces of music for the music be like the choir is singing like it's the Juggernaut, holy fucking shitballs. They're singing it like really dramatically. If you listen in the background, you're like, oh, I was like, that's really clever. That's cute. A joke that no one else would have really thought of or whatever. But anyway, we got a bunch of movie news to talk about. I thought I'd talk about trailers and all that stuff.
Yeah, I figured that was on your mind. But you've been so much in editing space.
Yeah.
Lately, you're just.
Well, I start to enjoy a good trailer. Like I that's why I listen to like if I find a really good one and I like the music, I'll go find the music for it.
Occasionally you'll get something like, I think about the trailer for the Batman where they just use Nirvana's that's
Underneath the Bridge. That's not what it's called.
That's not what it's called. It's called something like that. Yeah. And that's like, sometimes you want to use an effective piece of pop cultural music that catches you, where you're like, but the Batman doesn't work with a big swelling because it's more grimy and low and gross, and we'll see how that.
Well, the cool thing
reviews
about
have been coming out about that, by the way, saying it's like almost like a horror movie. Yeah. Have you heard about that?
I read they're already looking for a sequel, but I was like, they always want Batman and something. It could be terrible and they would say that. Yeah. But I heard that I mean it's so hard to like read news now and like try to parse out what's clickbait and what's probably true. I read that him and Matt Reeves had a lot of beef on set or whatever. I read that he was mad about like that new version of Justice League coming out or whatever. I don't know how much of that I believe.
Well, it's just like this thing going around where we'll talk about it in a minute, but Daniel Craig was misquoted as saying like, I don't think Bond should be a woman. Yeah. And then it's like they cut an elaborate piece where he was saying like, why does a woman have to be Bond? Like, why can't she be her own character, sort of thing?
We'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
I see both. I hate to be the both sides, Andy. I have a both sides to that one. But,
we'll say that we got
like
things to get to.
never know what to believe when I read like movie news anymore.
Like, I don't know what to believe with news. Like it's just there's an overabundance of content.
The movie news has that that extra added thing. It's like movie news is about one thing, and it's about like talking about movies or actors or entertainment news. And the problem with it is like
or revealing more about a project that they're still working on, so we can get more of the details to be like, what can we expect?
And the problem is like they function on a rapid pace news cycle where like when the lead up to Zack Snyder's Justice League was coming out, every 2 days a new story was about it. Whether it was just like and I must have read like the same batch of news dozens of times, just being like, I bet you didn't know Zack Snyder's Justice League was going to do this with Darkseid or whatever. And then I click on it, I was like, I already fucking knew that. God damn it.
It's just they tell you the same stuff, but they reword it in order to catch you.
It's worse than the clickbait cycle of regular news because it's like amplified by 1,000. So you'll get the same piece of information, but spun a bunch of different ways. Or
I don't know. Some news cycle, I'm pretty like, oh, is this the end?
Yeah. But what was it saying? Like I've heard that like one thing Matt Reeves said and Robert Pattinson said in an interview, he's like, and I really liked this. He was like, it feels like a lot of the fights, like the fight scenes or whatever, they're very personal. But for Batman, it feels like a very personal beef.
Well, even from like the trailer, like he's pretty aggro.
Yeah,
he beats the shit.
Which
out
I
of
love that because
dude.
it's like the opposite of Ben Affleck's Batman, where the fights are like, I don't care about any of these people anymore.
Right. It's to get out of the situation. He wants to get into the situation.
Yeah. Like his Batman is like, I don't care if I kill these people. They're just they're faceless drones to me at this point.
But
like Robert Pattinson's is like, no, I'm going to savor each one or whatever. So I was like, I think that's a cool idea.
Well, it's also the young versus the old. You know, he's supposed to be very, very, still pretty young in this.
Yeah.
And
Matt Reeves has quite a task cut out for him to top those action sequences. So I'm excited to see like what we do, and I hope that it makes good use not just of Batman's fighting abilities, but also like how quickly he thinks on his feet.
Yeah.
Like what I love about that warehouse fight is he uses his grapple gun, he uses his gadgets, he uses the batarangs, he uses giant crates to throw at people's face. Like it's like he's thinking on his feet, and then when he actually has to get down to fighting, like one thing I love about that is that none of those criminals are idiots in that fight. Like when they all run out of bullets, they attack him together. Because like if you're gonna attack Batman, you better do it together.
You better do it together. You better. You better.
It doesn't help them at all. But
Right.
like it's So like I want to see a fight that's also like makes use of his skills. I also hope we get we don't have to explain it fully, but I want to hope that they explain where he got his skills. Are we doing the Ra's al Ghul kind of like, I always say Batman Begins is now the perfect Batman origin.
Yeah,
because it's Batman year one.
You can't really get much better than that.
It's Batman year one, but they add the League of Assassins,
right,
or whatever, or the League of Shadows as they call it.
League of Shadows.
Anyway,
we'll see what happens.
First things first. Netflix released a bunch of stuff. Let's talk with the one that I thought was the most. I said it was like seeing an old friend who hasn't aged strangely or whatever. Like it's like meeting Bilbo Baggins at the end of Fellowship. Gandalf is like, you look exactly the same. What's going on here? Cowboy Bebop released their intro for what's going to be their. I imagine it's the intro of the Netflix
It is
show.
an intro, yeah.
And it is
stripped down. It's just the cast on the thing, but I imagine they'll put in production notes, directed by, produced, based on.
It's just they have remade the beginning of the old anime with that Yoko Kanno.
Yep, with Tank,
jazz,
with Tank by the seatbelts. Yeah. They do it with that wonderful.
Are they going to end it with dun, 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 that the real folk blues? Are they going to end the show the same way?
I don't know.
Cool.
I don't know.
But,
they've got Yoko Kanno on board.
like
they have access to everything.
They did this cool like superimposing, like they have a shot and then like he's smoking a cigarette and then the shot turns into like an anime silhouette. That was really cool.
I know they're not going to do that for the series. If they did that, that would have been really cool. Yeah. This has me really hyped. I was really hyped about it, and of course, immediately, a ton of other people I've seen have just been like sour on it immediately, and I'm like, no, I choose to like this now. If this was all it was, that's pretty awesome. Because
Netflix's genre pool, when they're doing genre shows like The Witcher or stuff or whatever, like they seem to put a lot of money and effort into it.
Right.
Now there's an Avatar: The Last Airbender series that's coming that I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna be watching that real closely to see what it is. But like, because the original creators of the show were on it and then they left.
Okay.
For like creative differences, so like it could be bad or whatever. But
that's one where I'm kind of like essentially a lot of what I've seen people talk about with this Bebop series, and that's since its inception a couple years ago to now, is just like why. And my thought is like,
it's an awesome.
I'm like, well, why not?
Yeah,
I'm willing to believe that, you know, if it fails, it fails. It's whatever. But like,
are you concerned that if they make the show, your Blu-ray of Cowboy Bebop is going to just disappear? Off
yeah,
the
it's
shelf?
gonna get snapped and it's gonna be gone. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't watch Shinichiro Watanabe's masterpiece anymore, where he was working with them the whole time too.
Yeah. One thing I liked about that trailer, not a trailer, it's the intro or whatever, but like you see glimpses. So like where in the original you would see glimpses of episodes or just like little one-off shots or whatever that are not really in the show. Here, like I saw the crazy clown man.
Yep,
or whatever.
Paralafu.
And then I saw
Mama
like
Murdoch.
you saw some really cool like wide shots of like spaceships and big spaceports. I was like, okay, so they put money into this.
You see the scene with Vicious and Spike at the cathedral.
With the little
And all those people have been cast, by the way. Mama Murdoch, who's the eco-terrorist.
Yeah, I remember her.
She's being played by Adrienne Barbeau, which is kind of awesome.
Yes.
You mostly would probably know her. She voiced Catwoman in the Batman the Animated Series. She was really.
I don't remember that. I don't know who that is.
Batman the Animated Series.
I know Batman the Animated Series.
Okay,
but
yeah.
I'm like,
She was a John Carpenter person. Like they were married for some time. She's great. She's a really great actress. Cool. So that's a big get. That's a good get.
At the very end we get Ein,
Yeah.
the puppy.
Yeah, and Ein, you also get mostly I was going through the whole thing like what references am I missing? Who else is here? Because it's pretty much like all the rest of the cast are characters who showed up in episodes. What's going to be interesting is are these going to be continuing threads? Because all these characters that show up in these little bits. You see Hakeem, the guy with the big afro, who's like
I remember.
You get the couple from the first episode from Jupiter Jazz.
Yeah. Do we see that? You got to be like water, man. Do we see that?
I don't think that guy. No.
That's one of my favorite episodes. So I want to see that one.
But you see these characters, and it's like they only exist in that.
Are we gonna
episode.
get the one where they left the thing in the fridge for too long?
No. No, we're not. We're not getting
I
toys in the attic.
I would love an episode like that though.
They got 10 episodes. They're gonna be like they might reference it, but like at this point,
is this a straight up remake, or do you think they're gonna make original stories too?
at this point,
Or is it gonna make half?
all those references of the past series, which at first I thought, oh, that's cute. They're doing like references to the past. This is going to be completely new material. No, those people have been cast and they're going to show up. So I imagine that there are going to be some that are just out and out remakes of the original
And then
series.
some are going to be like, here's some new stories
Yeah.
that we did with them.
I think
good.
that's what they're going to do. Or they're going to tweak them in some way, do something different. But that makes me wonder if it's just going to be kind of similar to something like Justified, where it's like each thing is episodic. Character enters, character story, character is either dead or something by the end, and our characters continue on.
I like. I thought there's a shot of John Cho doing a cool like kung fu kick.
Yeah.
And it was like that looks really good. That's
So-
good. That's a good.
some-
Because he hurt himself on the show.
Yeah.
And they had to shut it down for
Oh yeah.
months while he healed.
Then COVID hit. Like
Yeah.
it was like everyone's like, ew. Shakira looks great. Daniela Pieta,
She's playing.
she's playing Faye Valentine.
Yeah. I don't think. This is gonna sound sexist. I don't think she's dressed slutty enough.
Well, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be like they could introduce her in the classic pleather
The guy
outfit.
who plays Jet, is that Mustafa Shakir?
That is Mustafa Shakir.
He looks great.
He looks awesome.
He's got the little things.
Yeah, he's got
on
the
his
metal
face.
thing on his face and everything.
And John Cho's hair as Spike defies physics, but I think it works.
Well, the whole thing defies physics. There's been some complaints about like when you see him running and it's the Spike run and everything, it looks kind of silly. And I'm like, someone made a point of being like, I love this that they're going kind of campy with it. And I'm like, that's great. Yeah.
I think it's going to be campy in the way that like, I don't know if I would say it's going to be campy, but I think it's going to try to straddle that line, like kind of like a movie like Baby Driver, where it's fun.
It's stylized, hyper stylized.
But it can also be like darker and there are dark, like heavier episodes of Cowboy.
Very
Bebop.
much.
Yeah.
I mean, the
And
moment
there
you
are
have
fun, goofy
Vicious
ones,
in
like
it,
when they leave the leave the thing in the fridge and it kills everybody.
we see Teddy Bomber. You know, which means that like he's an anti-capitalist bomber who uses teddy bears to blow up establishments.
Yeah.
And that was the episode where Spike runs into Andy the cowboy, and
I remember.
and it's like I hope they have that because that's like you can do that stylized, and you mentioned something that Baby Driver, Edgar Wright, where it's like you were willing to believe if it is framed in this kind of way.
The action sequences get real gritty and real. I don't want to say dark, but like real gritty and real. But then when you're out of the action sequences, they're all kind of like they're a little goofy.
Yeah.
Like so, I think everything I've seen seems fine. Like, I don't read all the forums or whatever. It's like everything I've seen seems pretty good, and it seems like John Cho's needed an action movie for a long time.
He's needed a lead, like a real good lead.
Like I was watching Identity Thief the other day with Jason Bateman, and he's just like, in it, and he has like 12 lines, and I'm like, oh, he feels like he should be in bigger stuff than this. And like when you watch a movie, like he's in the Star Trek movies. And I remember watching the first Star
Zulu.
Trek. Yeah, I remember the first Star Trek movie when he's Zulu and he pulls out the sword and he fights on top of that thing, and I was like, oh yeah, John Cho's an action hero if he wanted to be. So I feel like I'm excited to see this.
Yeah. Alex Hassel looks really good as Vicious.
Yeah, I didn't get a good look at him really.
There's some promotional material out there. He looks pretty intense.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely keeping the looks of the characters like they're very good. But then again, Cowboy Bebop is doable. It's not something like Dragon Ball Z where like you could never replicate
because
those looks.
it's in a hard but comic book reality.
Yeah,
where it's just vaguely into the future, and mostly it's just very pop art stylized.
Yeah,
and that works. And so
let's talk about
looks
the
dope.
next.
I'm very excited.
Let's talk about the next thing. Sandman released a little. I don't even think it's a trailer. It's like a sizzle reel or something. Like
it's a teaser.
Yeah,
and it takes from the.
I don't know a lot about Sandman.
I do.
I know just enough to get me by. All I know is when I was watching it, I was like, this would be like the good vibe of like a Constantine show. I'd watch a Constantine show that looked like this.
He is in it.
Yeah,
and Jenna Coleman's going to be playing Joanna Constantine.
John Constantine's going to like show up? Who's playing?
I don't.
Everyone's going to be like, is it going to be Matt Ryan from that CW show, which is actually really good?
Well, that was the thing is Gwendolyn Christie is going to be playing Lucifer. And they had talked with the actor who had played Lucifer on the series, and Neil Gaiman, I think, was like, we tried, it just doesn't work out because this is going to be a very much its own thing.
Yeah.
So if Constantine shows up, it's probably going to be a different actor. I don't think they want to tie it into
I bet he doesn't show up
because
they're doing a Constantine show probably for HBO Max. But a Justice League Dark show is going to happen at some point.
And Jenna Coleman's going to be playing Joanna Constantine, his ancestor.
That's cool though,
and because that's a character. So the original Sandman, Neil Gaiman's Sandman, was more of a DC story. It was just this esoteric, weird DC story with a cult.
He shows up in Kingdom Come.
Yes,
which is what really great.
Yeah, Dream shows up in Kingdom Come. Specifically, Morpheus, the Dream, because obviously there are other Sandmen.
Well, no, Wesley Dodds shows up and he's in an insane asylum.
And Wesley Dodds is referenced many times in his like gas mask and like detective gear. That Sandman does show up.
That's cool.
But it's like a lot of this series is about descendants and and references. Lita Hall is a huge character in it, and they do all that.
How
Dr. Destiny
when you
is
read, like, a lot
going to
of
be a
those-
big villain in it.
When you read like the Sandman comics or whatever, how much does it tie in with like I doubt we're not going to see like Superman or something in this show, but how much does it tie in with like a larger DC universe? Does he come into contact with like Dr. Fate or something like that?
In Preludes and Nocturnes Volume 1, he goes to like the Justice League like space tower.
Really?
Like he meets up with
this show.
He meets up with Martian Manhunter.
Cool.
It is the first part is very DC. He does a lot of detective running with John Constantine. Scarecrow is a villain in it, and he shows up in. They go to Arkham.
Cool.
Batman's referenced. It is firmly DC. After that, it becomes its own lore. It starts going in when Gaiman gets more freedom. And you start getting into like the dreaming. You start getting into the story of oh my gosh, I forgot the character, his siblings, death, destiny, desire, delirium. I forgot what they're called. They're called something very particular.
Like Anger or War is one of them.
They're all D names.
Yeah. I don't know.
Destruction used to be, but Destruction left.
Yeah, one of them's like a big jacked dude.
That's
like,
Destruction.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
But spoiler, Destruction like split up with the family and went on to do his own thing.
Probably because he's self-destructive.
Something like that. I forgot what they're called. The Endless.
Yeah.
So we pretty much a ton of people have already been cast in this. In this teaser, we see
Charles Dance.
Charles Dance. It's 1912, 1915 or so.
Yeah.
And he is playing the character who's not going to be in it much. He's playing Roderick Burgess, and Burgess is a kind of an Aleister Crowley type.
Yeah,
and so he's an occultist who's like, we want to create, start our new dawn of the coming century. So he's trying to catch death. He fails. He catches Dream, and Dream becomes enslaved for 90 years, awakening again in 1989. And what the first part of Sandman is Dream has 3 specific items that give him his power. One is his helmet that helps him like transfer between realities and dimensions. One is his bag of sand that obviously gives him some power over the dreaming itself.
Yeah.
And I forgot what the other one is, but essentially the story is he has to go find these. And one of them is he goes to John Constantine and finds out he has to go to hell.
Yeah.
Which is run by Lucifer, who at the end of that arc rips off his wings and says, I don't want to run hell anymore. It's yours. Fuck it. And that's where you get the Lucifer that's the guy who owns a bar.
Oh, yeah, okay. I don't know a lot of these references. I know some of them. But
Yeah, it's so that Lucifer series that's going on now on like UPN or WB or
I think it's
or is it NBC?
It's not the CW. It's like Fox or something.
Yeah,
It's one of
that Lucifer is Neil Gaiman's Lucifer.
Huh.
He's the one that said like, I'm done running hell. I just want to live on Earth and solve mysteries and stuff.
Yeah.
That's where that Lucifer comes from. And Gwendolyn Christie will play that. He's playing a lot with gender and things like that. Sure. And it's going to be, but yeah, we see that. We see that opening sequence.
I remember like the only Sandman story I ever read is this weird one-off called The Dream Eaters.
Yeah.
Which is about it's set in like, I don't know, like medieval like Japan or something, and there's like a Buddhist monk or whatever who just like he's bald and he walks around doing monk stuff or whatever, and like there's a fox demon and a badger demon, and like the badger demon is trying to like they make a wager who can scare him the most, and the badger demon shows up as a wandering army or whatever, and he's like, we need to use your or they're seeing who can get them to invite him in or invite them in or whatever. Yeah. He's like, we need to use your little monk palace or whatever to feed our men. Do it or I'll crush you to death. And he doesn't fall for it, and he goes like, you smell like a badger or whatever. He's like, oh, and then he like leaves. And the fox demon shows up as a beautiful woman.
Yeah, it gets in there.
Yeah, and she shows up, and then he realizes she's a fox, and she leaves or whatever. She gets found out and she leaves or whatever, but she keeps coming back because she falls in love with him or whatever. And then
I like that.
You realize she through something happened, some evil old lord curses her or whatever. So they end up falling in love later or whatever. But what happens is like he makes a deal with Dream to fix her dreams in some way or whatever, and he gives her something called the Baku. If you've ever seen a Baku, they're like Japanese mythology. They look like Fu Manchu lions, but with the head of a taper.
Like, is it like the Bakaku or something? I know what you're talking about.
They're called Baku.
Baku,
yeah, I know what
I've seen them.
They eat your bad dreams,
right?
Which is what he does for her. Whatever.
I've seen one of those in the Shin Megami Tensei games, in Persona.
And they, what ends up happening is he does it, but in order to do so, he has to sacrifice some portion of his life or whatever. So he only lives in her dreams now. So whenever she goes to sleep, she can see him or whatever. And it's actually like a really sweet love story, but like it has you would never. It's like it's a weird story. I bought it on a whim or whatever, but it's really good.
Later, there is a ongoing plot in the Sandman, but there are tons of Sandman stories that are just that. These little one-off things. Yeah. One of my favorites, I think I've mentioned it before here, is Morpheus Dream hangs out with his buddy William Shakespeare. Yeah. And helps them put on a production of A Midsummer's Night Dream for the Fae people.
You told me this.
Yes,
they do it so they can remember themselves later.
Because they're leaving the world, and it's like I gave this to Bill Shakespeare so he would remember you all and like give you your alms.
I remember don't his siblings have like a bunch of like really unique character traits?
Yes,
I remember them being kind of like the Greek gods, and if you read like new Wonder Woman comics. Like the Greek gods all have these very like weird, like maybe not the new ones, but like in like the 90s or early 2000s, they had all these really interesting traits. Like Hades was like a man in a suit, but his head turned into a bunch of candles that are on fire, and like the wax is dripping down his face. And he's constantly depressed and sad.
Yeah, that sounds like Despair.
Yeah,
Despair is this agendered, obese, sad creature that thrives on pain. She's always, or they always are like picking at like hooks and things, and just like they affect people who are like completely to their bottom.
Yeah.
And like and then Desire, who is probably the most antagonistic, is also kind of like when they were written, they're very clearly kind of this Bowie-esque character, and very much like they are all style, they are all fashion, they are all vanity. The most famous, other than Morpheus, would be Death, who is always depicted as a lovely young woman who is the sweetest and nicest person in the world, who is sort of the big sister to Dream. Dream's quite young because it's all about what came first. Well, Death came first for a lot of creatures, so Death was there first.
Yeah.
Because the one thing you discover is these entities exist for everything.
Yeah.
There's Martian Manhunter, I think at one point says like, I remember you, but you didn't look like this.
Yeah.
Because he remembers the Martian version of Dream.
That's hilarious.
And so like there's one that's like a group of like plants, like these alien sentient plants, and Dream is one that's like a black and white like flower.
That's funny.
It's great. One of my favorite characters I hope to see, and I'll wrap up the Sandman stuff, is Hobgoblin. Yeah. Everyone says Sean Bean should play him, and I think that would be a great.
Is that why?
No, he's the exact opposite. Hobgoblin at one point in the Middle Ages says when death comes to him, he says, "No, I don't want to," and she says, "Okay." And he just keeps for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. He just says, "No, I'm not going to die." And that becomes a character that shows up throughout the years as Hobgoblin, who keeps
is he like an invulnerable? He can't be killed.
No, he can't be killed. He chooses not to die. He just said, "No, I'm not going to do it." Much like a folklore character. Like he's like, they said you're not going to die, so he does it. He does it. He chooses not to, but he has to deal with the repercussions of that. And so Dream keeps coming back to him to say, "Old friend, what have you gleaned from your time now?" And he's like stubborn. He's like, "No, I'm not giving up yet. I keep wanting to challenge it." I love that character. There's one of my favorite scenes.
I assume he has to watch all of the people he loves die.
Oh yeah, and he just tries to stick it out. One of my favorite scenes is in the modern era, in the 1990s. He goes on a date to a Ren fair, and he's like judging everything around it, and he's like, "The one thing they always forget is the horse shit. There was just shit all over the place. It stunk all the time. They never get that right. Yeah. It's so clean here. They don't remember." And I'm like, I love that. David Fulis is going to be playing Dr. Destiny, who is an actual DC villain.
I remember, yeah.
He's going to be a very scary, weird version of himself in this.
That's cool. That's good casting.
Yeah.
I also thought he would be a good Felix Faust, or David Thewlis would, but
yeah,
well, he's also been Ares in the Wonder Woman.
Yeah, that is. He's also been Ares.
Yeah.
And Stephen Fry is going to be playing a character who is Gilbert, who is the Fiddler's Green. He's an entity. He's like a spirit of like, he is a land. He's a mythical land called the Fiddler's Green. Cool. As a person. Weird. And he meets with Lita Hall when she's at a hotel at a convention for serial killers. And that's in A Doll's House. That's in book 2, which is one of my favorites. Because you also get to meet the Corinthian, who, that's the reason why Dream's getting involved, is the Corinthian is a nightmare that escaped the dreaming, that eats people. He takes off his sunglasses. He's got teeth for eyes. And he's being played by Boyd Holbrook, the actor Boyd Holbrook. Yeah, he's going to, you can't, the Corinthian is like slick Tom Cruise looking guy, and then he takes off his sunglasses. He's got mouths for eyes.
Cool.
Love the Corinthian.
That's pretty cool. I imagine like the Spectre probably shows up in some of these stories at some point.
I bet the Spectre would show up. But
it reminds me it reminds me of Wonder Woman's Greek gods, where their personalities are tied to some sort of indelible part of who they are that they can't really escape or whatever.
Well, and it also kind of reminds, this is something we see Neil Gaiman do a lot, are these like using these pantheons. We see it in American Gods, obviously.
I've never seen that or read it or anything.
The book's amazing.
Yeah,
the book's amazing.
It.
Or even in Good Omens, like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse show up, but they're very modernized. Yeah. And so and then he has these ways of modernizing these ancient deities. Yeah.
I feel like that's something Grant Morrison probably stole from him when he was doing those Wonder Woman stories. Because Hephaestus,
I don't think they stole. They're good friends.
I mean that
it's like him more and Morrison are like the big three of British comics.
British weirdos.
I guess you could throw Warren Ellis in there too.
Yeah.
But
like he creates Hephaestus as like a god that has this incurable curiosity to create, because that's what he does. He crafts things or whatever. Ares is like exactly what you'd think he would be. He's just like a horrible, brutal monster. With like he literally has like the skin of his victims,
war man,
the blanks of his bed. And Hades is this really sad story of this man. He's not evil.
No,
he has to live in the underworld or whatever, and so he's always filled with death and despair because that's what he's around. And there's a part where Wonder Woman tries to free him, and she stops her because he's like, somebody has to. This is somebody's job. Somebody has to be down here. And the sad story of Hades is that he will always feel sadness and despair, no matter how much you want to save him from it or whatever. So he has to stay down here. He goes, "I'm sorry, but you have to come back with me," or whatever. And so she leaves him down there, and he's just this sad guy who just has to live with it or whatever. It's really sad. Makes me sad talking about it. But anyway,
that reminds me.
That's a trope that I like. That's not unique to any type of medium, really, but like characters whose character flaws or character traits are indelibly tied to their personality. It feels like something that that's like a through line that I think those things have.
Well, you see that a lot in The Dreaming as well, like this space that.
What does his sand do again?
It lets people fall asleep.
Is that all?
But then he's able to enter their subconscious and be able to operate in them.
Yeah.
Because what happens is after he's imprisoned by the occultists, there's 90 years or so where nobody dreams. And so like there's a whole like group of a bunch of people go comatose for years because they're stuck in the dreaming. And so that kind of gets like re-released after that.
Do the siblings, does him and his siblings, do they have like beef? Do they end up coming?
They have rivalries. They have family problems. Obviously, there's one.
What's Dream's responsibility then? What's his job?
Well, he's like one of the youngest brothers, and he's like the one who's super serious about his job. He's a melancholy gothic. Like he's okay, man. He's a melancholy gothic.
They're all melancholy gothic.
Well, not Death. Death is like. She says peachy keen and walks around with a little umbrella and says like, anytime she escorts somebody off to the next world, she says like, you had all the you had just enough time. You did great. She's who you want to meet, and she's the close.
Great. I love that. I love the idea of a positive death.
She's wonderful. She's one of the best characters.
I want to say that was
Gaiman's
stolen from Touched by an Angel. If you ever watched that show,
it is
an angel of
predates Touched by an Angel.
Is it really?
Yeah, because Sandman came out in the 80s.
Okay,
it came out in 89.
And the Angel of Death in Touched by an Angel is like also like a very positive guy.
I think that's just because also like Mort from Terry Pratchett's Discworld is also like a plucky death. Yeah. I think it's just a fun thing to play with, but death in Gaiman's is so like delightful.
If death was like Dream, it would be very ubiquitous.
Yeah, but there's also the character of Delirium, who used to be Delight, and then something happened, and she turned into this kind of like crazy, addled, multicolored hair loon, essentially. And
she's like was it like an obsession thing where her delight turned into like an obsessive thing?
I think it's just what happened to human nature traumatized her and made her into this new creature.
Is there a happiness?
She used to be that. She used to be Delight and then became Delirium. There's Destiny, who's one of the oldest. He's mostly like wears a big hood and a book, and he has the Book of All Fates, and just kind of like wanders in his courtyard.
What's his job? They all have jobs, right?
He's kind of pretty much detached from everything because his job is to keep the threads of Destiny in line, to make sure nothing goes off out of line.
So he's the timekeepers.
Yeah, he's essentially like a timekeeper. And then Destruction left a long time ago.
What does that mean? So there's no Destruction anymore? Because that doesn't seem accurate.
There is, but he had big beef and left, and it's just like, fuck you all, I'm leaving. That becomes a plot line later.
Where did he go?
To live on an island somewhere, just to be like, because he's like a big, jolly, like beefy guy with a big beard. He's like a Brian Blessed type, but I think he just was like, I'm sick of all this family drama, I'm leaving. And because they're essentially, the problem with them is they are too human, and so they deal with these human problems.
Did anyone ever fall in love? I feel like there's a big story about one of them falls in love and it's badly.
Dream's connection with humanity leads to a lot of different kinds of weird things that happen. Yeah. The dreaming itself is a lot of fun because there's all these different characters. I just want to bring up one because you bring up sadness. Yeah. There's Cain and Abel, the biblical Cain and Abel.
Yeah, I think you mentioned this before, but keep going.
Where they are brothers and Abel is constantly like put upon and nervous and sad and weepy, and Cain is a sadistic bully, and he just murders him every time he gets, and then he comes back to life. And so like Cain and Abel live out their destiny, this horrible fate that beset humankind over and over again in the dreaming. And then there's Lucian, who's the librarian, who's sort of like Dream's buddy. He's like, I keep up with everything. I keep all the dreams and the nightmares and all these instances in check, so they are where they are, so they don't get loose and cause chaos in the subconscious.
Which I imagine is a plot thread when the guy with the
Corinthian gets out.
Gets out.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, once Dream comes back, Lucian's like, we got a lot of work to do. You've been gone for almost 100 years. Like, that may not seem like much in the grand sense of things.
Does it affect the real world when like nobody dreams? Is there like a thing where like
there's a bunch of people who go into comas and there's all this other stuff that happens.
But does anyone make the connection like nobody's dreamed in like 90 years?
I don't.
When was the last time you had a dream?
I don't recall. I'd have to reread it.
I feel like there would be press conferences and stuff from the CDC.
I'll wrap it up by just saying The Sandman may be one of my favorite things I've ever read.
A lot of people love it. I like Neil Gaiman.
It's my favorite Neil Gaiman. I think it's one of the greatest comic books. Pat Rothfuss, the writer of the Kingkiller Chronicles, he did the introduction for the 30th anniversary when they did the re-releases of Sandman a couple of years ago in the 2018. And he said it better than 2019. He said it better than I think anyone. He's like, when I read it, when he was talking about it, he read it for the first time. He's like, I can't believe you can do this in a comic. Like when he read it, he was like, I can't believe you can talk about like Greek and Greco-Roman mythology, and you can talk about Shakespeare, and you can talk about like these concepts and everything, and then tie it all together into this wide-brimmed thing. And he's like, I've never seen anything like this before, and it's true. Like I love
Neil
it.
Gaiman, like I first came into contact with him when I was reading Constantine. When Alan Moore left Constantine, he was one of the guys brought in, and that's some of my favorite Constantine stuff.
And and his Constantine in this is really good.
You know what Neil Gaiman is? Neil Gaiman is accessible Alan Moore, or less insufferable Alan Moore. That's what he is.
He's more than that, but yes.
Like I use it as a way to describe people. If you like Alan Moore, but you want to get rid of all the weird snake gods and the curses and stuff,
and a lot of the rape,
and you want to enjoy a story for once instead of being yelled at, like maybe Neil Gaiman,
because Neil Gaiman has a sense of humor. Alan Moore does not have a sense of humor, because Alan Moore also picked up,
he's less weird Grant Morrison.
They're all
Grant Morrison. I think Grant Morrison does that, but like for superheroes. Like when I read some Grant Morrison stories, and I'm like, oh God, you had me and you lost me. Like,
well, the thing with Grant Morrison, he's just like, hey, acid was pretty cool.
Yeah,
and
that gets a little old.
That gets a little
old.
Though. Yeah, and Neil Gaiman.
He's like a kid who discovered pot, and then his whole life became like just doing pot.
Pretty much that. except he's also a brilliant writer. He is, but he is also like, you have a third eye that needs to be squeegee clean, and I will talk about Batman with that. I remember R.I.P.
I just think Grant Morrison is like he reached a peak and then he went down or whatever. I
haven't kept up a lot of Morrison lately. Because I started getting into him right when the Batman Renaissance started happening after The Dark Knight, and then R.I.P. was going on, and Final Crisis, and
Final
Court of Owls.
Final Crisis is about where it happens to me. Like sometime in the mid 2000s, he reaches after All Star Superman is another one that people love from him, or whatever. And somewhere around there, I was just like, your stories are getting too goofy and weird, or they're becoming boring and bland.
Right.
Like I loved his Justice League story because he kind of brought in that weird, all-encompassing width of like something like the Sandman, where he was like the Justice League became like this pantheon of gods, and there's like these really great parallels that keep happening in the stories, and just weird, cool, wacky villains. Like they meet like someone called the Hyper Clan. It's like he was also the first guy that made Batman like cool and like people before this like Batman doesn't even have any powers. Why would he be on the Justice League? And he's like, oh, I'll show you.
I'll show you Batman.
While he'll be on the Justice League, a group of people called the Hyper Clan come to planet Earth or whatever, and they pretend to be like that they're here to fix all your problems and look like these golden angels or whatever. They also have really cool designs. They have a leader called Protex who looks like Goku when he's in Super Saiyan mode, but his whole body's gold essentially.
Slick.
And then when he's there, they start killing supervillains and like fixing all the problems, wink wink,
right,
or whatever, fixing global warming, and then they're eventually revealed to be white Martians or whatever. They take out
a conquest plan.
They take out all the Justice League or whatever, and they leave Batman dying in the snow, like in the North Pole with his ship destroyed or whatever. And they're like, he's just a man, leave him there. Oh, terrible mistake. And there's a part where they have him back at their headquarters and I can't remember all the names, but he's like X and such. You report in, and he's like, hello, and they go and they find his body with a batarang in it, and he goes, I know your secret. And then he like straight up like slasher movie style takes them all out. And
that's a Batman I want to see.
Protex has Superman like chained up and like with a bunch of kryptonite around him, so he can't do anything. He's like, how is he doing all this? He's just a man. And Superman laughs at him because he's the most dangerous man on the planet. You left him alive, whatever. And then Batman,
I love that.
He frees Superman in the funniest way. He's like, that kryptonite's not real. He's like, it's all an illusion. And he goes, oh, and he just breaks free of it. And he's like, and Superman fucking wipes the floor with him. It's good shit, man.
Which story is this?
This is his beginning of his JLA run.
Okay, all right.
Aquaman has a hook hand. Green Lantern is Kyle Rayner. Wonder Woman has the big like frilly like Heart, if you're in the band Heart from the 80s.
Yeah,
like that kind of hair.
I need to read this. This sounds dope.
It's a lot of fun.
I love the image of them like being like, well, I don't get this, and Superman is just like, you have no idea.
He
starts doing George Clooney and Michael Clayton. You're so fucked. You're so fucked.
It's not perfect, but it's got a lot of good stuff in it, and it was the first time I remember reading the Justice League and be like, oh, I love this. This is awesome. Superman Red and Blue happens here. Like Superman becomes red and blue, and he has the mullet because he's come back from the dead and stuff at this point. So like it's a lot of cool stuff, and it was him working inside of a universe that had rules that were like, you can't do this, you can't do that, but he still made something fascinating and interesting. And then he just doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Now they're weird. They're kind of like Alan Moore. They've gotten weirdly inaccessible.
Esoteric and all that.
But Neil Gaiman has stayed not that.
Well, Neil Gaiman also is just a novelist as well, and he has a very keen knowledge of mythology and a respect for mythology. But
that. Underneath all that, it's like your favorite. It's like one of your favorite band. Like a lot of my favorite bands or whatever. Like I love like listening to songs and taking them apart and listening to the structure. A lot of my favorite bands, like they'll go on forever, but like they still have the fundamental. The bones are still there. Whereas like Alan Moore's bones have deteriorated to the point where I just don't enjoy it much anymore.
Yeah.
Like I'll still read Watchmen like this is genius or whatever, and then I'll read like some of the new stuff he's doing, and I'm like, yeah, that's whatever, that's fine.
Pretty much.
But like Neil Gaiman, the bones are still there. Yeah. He knows how to put those stories together, even if it's weird or esoteric, and make it interesting.
But we'll see what happens.
I'm gonna cut most of this out.
We'll see what happens with this
Sandman.
I do love Sandman. I'm excited for this. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. He looks Will Sturridge or whatever his name is looks very much
looks
like
great.
His hair needs to be like bigger and frillier, but like it looks.
But he's got
great.
the chin.
Yeah.
He's got the chin. He's got the black eyes. We'll see what happens.
Let's talk The Matrix.
Oh, let's talk The Matrix, man.
What did you?
Think? Man.
Because you know what I thought.
I feel like there was something about it that I was gonna say. In particular, now I can't remember what it was.
It's a very deliberate trailer. Like even the music, like are talking about pills and like this pill makes you big, this pill makes you small.
Well, it's literally
the pill that your mother gives you doesn't do anything at all.
It's Jefferson's. It's Starship. It's Jefferson Airplanes. Was it White Rabbit? I think I can't remember. Or Alice. Go Ask Alice.
Yeah.
So which some people have said is really on the nose, but I'm like,
first of all, The Matrix is on the nose.
Yeah. Also, this is the new Matrix. In the first time in almost 2 decades, it gets to use this song that the whole thing about like follow the white rabbit and everything. It gets the liberty of using it, and it works beautifully in this.
Only directed by one of the Wachowskis?
Yeah, there's some interesting... Lana? Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
Which is not because... There's no beef there.
There's no beef, but I think it was just... The other sister was just like...
She was working... They were working together on that show Sense8.
Yes.
Some other stuff, and then she wanted to go off and keep doing some other stuff, but she was like, I can't wait to see how it turns out or whatever.
Yeah, I don't imagine it's anything, but it is kind of like, I kind of want their baby.
You'd like it to be both of them, but when I was watching it, I was like,
well, I wonder how much of it is like what the Matrix has now become as a cultural cachet, both mostly negative, with the red pill.
you think? Oh yeah, well,
Yeah. Because there's that great.
I like to think that Matrix transcends just that culture.
Because there's that great Twitter thing where I think Matt Getz or somebody is talking about you take the red pill, and then Lana Trump is like, I'm taking it, and then one of the Wachowskis is like, go fuck yourself, both of you.
Stop ruining the thing that I made.
Yeah. Guess what? It was a trans analogy. Deal with it, you fucking conservatives.
Yeah. And now it became like the black pill. What does the black pill mean? It means like you've transcended both of them, and it's like
it means the complete left. The black pill means that you see no political way of succeeding, and so you become a depressed anarchist.
Yeah, that's
not an anarchist. That's not fair. You become a depressed nihilist who wants to destroy everything. That's when you end up getting Nazis.
Yeah.
If the red pill doesn't work enough, you take the black pill, and they end up Heil Hitlering and go try to blow up buildings.
Yeah. Anyway,
sucks.
The first thing that I noticed about the trailer is like it looks beautiful.
Yeah,
the colors are like these beautiful. The colors are so nice. It reminded me of, this is not a good movie, but it reminded me of how good they are at making movies. When I watched Jupiter Ascending, notably bad movie with an insane Eddie Redmayne.
Stupider ass ending.
With an insane Eddie Redmayne performance. But I noticed when I remember about that movie, I was watching a video about like how someone's like all the Marvel movies look like dirt, and he goes like not like they're not bad. He goes, if you look at the color grading, they look kind of gray and dull. I know people say like, oh, they have these great bright colors, and he goes, not really.
No, every time I see that shot in the Avengers when it circles around them in the streets of New York, it's so flat.
Yes.
The lighting looks so plain.
And a guy took some of these images and recolored them. And he goes, this is what it kind of should look like.
It needs to be sharper.
And he goes, people
and it
shit
just
on
looks so.
Yeah.
It does look so. It almost looks like this could, what some people have said about Bebop, it looks like cosplayers.
Yeah, I mean, what the point he was saying was like, if people say like the DC movies are too dark and there's no vibrancy to the colors, but if you look at them as images, because that's what movies are, they're images. Yeah. He goes, look at this image.
I mean, no one can deny that.
He showed like that.
The image of Snyder's movies looks beautiful.
He's not even just talking about Snyder, but he was like, if you look at like a movie like he shows like Civil War. Remember that big the airport fight scene?
Yeah.
He goes, oh, it looks all gray and whatever.
It's
so a great
boring.
scene. I'm not saying it's not amazing or whatever, but he was like, and then he showed like a bunch of images from Aquaman, Man of Steel. A couple images from BVS, Wonder Woman. He goes, you see how the colors like they pop or whatever?
It's cinematic language.
He goes, here's a great example of this. Jupiter Ascending, notably terrible movie. And he goes, look at the cinematography and the color of the movie. It's just so rich.
Yeah.
So much texture to it. And it was I think that was one of the first movies they shot digitally. When I saw the trailer for the Matrix, when the movie opened,
which it's the Matrix Resurrection.
Yes.
Okay.
When I saw the way it opened, it has a slow pushing in of this landscape and this like little suburbs of like probably Los Angeles or something. And I noticed like, man, the colors look really nice. So nice, maybe almost too nice. Like what's going on here?
Yeah,
like
it's exactly right.
I was watching it. I was like, oh yeah. These guys made some of the best action movies of all time that literally defined how we make action movies.
Yeah.
They made new technologies, like this movie and like the Star Wars movies, changed the way we did, and like the first Lord of the Rings movie or whatever, changed the way we did movies because these things like doing the 360s for the bullet time when Neo and Smith are shooting
that was something the Wachowskis.
They had to create like virtual camera rigs to.
They essentially were just like, can we make anime physics in our world?
Yeah.
And they pushed everything in 1988.
And as I was watching this trailer, I was like, I don't like Matrix. What's the last one? Matrix
Revolution.
It's not. I don't like it. I don't think it's a good movie. I like Matrix Reloaded a lot more than a lot of people do, though. And as I was watching it, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that like before Speed Racer or whatever, they made these giant fucking monoliths of filmmaking. Like it's crazy to me because Bill Pope never won an Oscar for cinematography for those Matrix movies, and I gotta know like who the fuck won cinematography that year? It's probably gonna be Dances with Wolves or something stupid.
Well, that's a completely different. You're right. You're right though. It's gonna be American. It's gonna be a fucking
something stupid.
American Beauty or whatever.
Yeah, and then I watched it and I was like, man, these guys made giant fucking movies. And as that trailer went on, I remember the end. There's a part someone shoots a missile at Neo and he air bends it into a helicopter. There's a part where a person does like a flip off of a thing onto a car, and then like the camera pans, like so innovative camera movements or whatever. And I was like, God, I don't care if this movie sucks. It's gonna fucking slay.
Well, there's
Like,
something else to how crisp it looks, like, because we gather from the plot that it's like whatever Neo and Trinity are now, they had the Matrix has been reset, and therefore their memories have been reset.
I think I was also like that pill is dulling his memories of who he used to be,
Right.
or whatever.
Because he's seeing Neil Patrick Harris, right? No, or Jonathan Goff.
No, it's Neil Patrick.
Neil Patrick Harris. Jonathan Goff, I think, is going to be
Am I
playing.
crazy? We don't like that word here.
Yeah.
He's a member of the system. He's lying to you. Like all I can think was that.
And so he's going to be doing that. What people brought up is like, because people said like, well, why does the Matrix look like this? The Matrix was originally like green and everything. It's like, that's because they've updated to 2.0.
Yeah.
Now everything's in nice HD. Everything's
4K,
Apple 4K
HDR.
Apple. It's still a false image. It's still, but we don't live in the age of like black and green anymore.
Yeah.
That worked in the 1990s. That worked in the 2000s. But now we're past Windows Vista. We're past Windows XP. We're in Apple El Capitan, like
Samaria or whatever. I don't know
everything looks so slick because it needs to, because this is the new fake future, the new fake life. Oh my gosh, it's gonna obviously, Morpheus.
Yeah.
We've been saying Morpheus before.
Yeah. He's not coming back, and they cast Yahya Abdul-Mateen
As his new version.
I'm salty. I
As
like
Lawrence
Yahya Abdul-Mateen,
but it's not Lawrence Fishburne.
it's not. That's Lawrence Fishburne's role,
Well,
and I
and-
don't care for this.
and it's-
Everyone else looks older. Yeah, he's older, and he's probably put on like 20 pounds in his life or whatever. But
Well,
like,
it's a precedent that they set before, because the actress who played the Oracle died halfway through production of the second movie, and they were like, hey, it's the Oracle still, but like my program changed, so I look different.
yeah. But Lawrence Fishburne's still alive, and it rubs me the wrong way.
Well, and it's also because his performance as Morpheus is so iconic.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. It's one of the most amazing things about that series is his performance.
Yeah.
I want to see Hugo Weaving show up again, because I know he will. He's been cast.
Yeah,
but,
I'm sure they'll figure something.
But I know that I think Jonathan Goff is supposed to be playing this new agent.
Which one is that?
He's the guy at the end. He's the other.
We're going back to the Matrix or whatever.
Yeah.
That guy.
Yeah, that's
I
Jonathan
can
Goff.
recognize him.
Yeah.
I know they did cast like a famous like male model to play like some of these new agents that we're going to be using or whatever. But like all in all, I just thought it was awesome. It makes me sad that Lawrence Fishburne, because he talks about those movies like it's the best thing I'll ever do. And I look back at him now and I'm so proud of those movies or whatever. And I'm like, but we're gonna get the new cooler hip black dude to play Morpheus. I'm like,
Well, and I wonder, yeah,
no.
and you never know what they'll pull on that.
yeah, I like Yahya
lot-
Abdul-Mateen, but I'm just saying like.
We'll
I
talk
don't
about
know.
him in a minute.
Yeah, we will talk about it in a minute.
Jada Pinkett Smith is, of course, going to be in it.
Yeah, she's coming back as Niobe.
Yep, coming back as Niobe. Yeah, Yahya Madeen.
Jessica Chenwick. I can't remember her name. What it is. She's from Iron Fist in the new Star Wars movies.
Yeah, she'll be in that. Yeah, Jonathan Groff, Neil Patrick Harris, Christina Ricci. Okay,
Yes, yeah,
cool.
I saw. There's a shot of her in the trailer.
Looks pretty interesting.
Bill Pope did not come back to do cinematography. I
No,
think
who's doing cinematography
I
for this
think
one?
he's dying. It's one of
John Toll and Danielle Massasisi.
yeah. John Toll has done a lot of great cinematography.
Oh my
as well.
God! Yeah, he won an Academy Award for Legends of the Fall and Braveheart.
Yep.
He comes from Western world.
Even if you get closer to the current stuff, he's done some really amazing stuff. I think he also did the cinematography for the Shang-Chi. Because one of the things I was noticing about Shang-Chi was like the cinematography of this movie is fucking great. Yeah, but
very So I
it's got a stacked. It's got a stack like it. I'm not gonna say it's gonna be great because the Wachowskis aren't perfect filmmakers all the time. But like, I hope it's fucking bonkers.
Yeah.
Even if it's bad, I hope it's bad. I hope it's bonkers bad.
I had a lot of moments where I was really excited because it's kind of like now this is about a character who we already know their history.
Yeah.
And they don't know their history. Their history will now be revealed to them. And we're just going to watch, Keanu Reeves, Thomas Anderson become Neo again.
Yeah.
And where he's like, oh, I'm a god. I'm essentially I can reoperate this whole thing.
Yeah.
Now, how that plays into the first three films' messianic imagery of like, he is meant to be the one because of this and all that and all these little things. I watched a video of like the lore of the Matrix recently, and it's like, what is he? How does the one work?
Well, the one is he's not even the first one.
No,
There's 6 more. Apparently.
Yeah, there were 6 other ones.
Is that ever going to come back? Maybe that'll come back.
Well, it's like
Team of 6 ones. That'd be cool.
But then it's like
6.
he's here. And he gets to be himself again in a way, but we'll see when the next trailer comes out because it's very fascinating.
I did have this feeling watching the trailer where I was like, so many movies have been influenced by the Matrix.
Oh, a whole,
like, especially the
all
action.
of action film.
Yeah.
Without the Matrix itself is probably one of the most influential films of the last 30 years.
Yeah, Trinity does her move in the trailer as well. She does that in all 3 movies, by the way.
Well, it was so good the first time. They're like, we got to keep it up.
You don't think you forget that she does it more than one time or whatever. But as I was watching the movie, I was like, before the trailer came out, I was like, oh, they're doing a new Matrix film. But so many movies have been influenced by the Matrix films. Is the action gonna seem rote and we've seen this before? Nope. It's still innovative.
Yeah.
Like that's the great thing I love about it is I didn't feel like tired watching it or like, oh god, we're bringing like the part where like they're having a fight in the lake dojo thing in the little trailer, and he goes like he's like, you don't know me, and he just goes boom, and everything just shatters, and I was like, they are whatever their faults as filmmakers are, and like they also they helped write V for Vendetta, which is another great movie they don't get credit for. They were also second unit directors on that movie that they're not credited for.
Did they not direct it?
James McTeague directed that.
That always felt like a Wachowski film.
Well, they were very involved with it, and James McTeague has also done some great stuff. He did Ninja Assassin, which is my opinion the best directed DVD action movie you'll ever see. But it's
I saw Ninja Assassin 10 years ago and thought it was horrible.
I think it's all right. I love that those action sequences to me are like they should be.
I think the fight choreography was great. I think for when we were watching it, me and my friends were watching it, it was all the CGI blood and everything. It's just like, this is dumb as hell.
we'll have to just leave that there. But I was watching it, I was like, whether or not this will be good, I feel like it probably will be. I'm not as sure about it as I am like Dune, but like when I watched that trailer, I was like, man, those guys really did something amazing. And if this is like their way of like, it's still innovative. Even in a day where we have like 20 plus years of technology stacked on top of it, they're still finding it. I'm sure it's easier for them now because the technology fine-tuned and perfected over years, but I'm like,
this is their legacy, you know, and
I'm like, it still looks great.
Even if it's just Lana, you know, it still is, you know, what these women did, you know, this powerful work. And what it will say, I'm more curious about what it's going to say about the influence of the Matrix itself in culture. Yeah, you kind of like what you were saying about Bebop's like seeing an old friend again. I was getting that vibe too. I'm like, oh my god, we're going back to the Matrix.
Yeah. It looks cool, and it didn't. I was so worried it was gonna be like when we saw a first trailer or first glimpse at it, it was just gonna be like a bunch of like whatever. And I was like, oh, it's just gonna be like a bunch of like it's gonna feel like I said tired or played out, like a band. Kind of like a band going back to their early sound, but like it's not as good because they've already said what they had to say then or whatever. And then
especially after 20 years.
But it's like Metallica going back to Death Magnetic, where it's like, nope, this feels like home now or whatever. But I was like, it looks great. Let's talk about James Bond real quick.
Yeah, well, there's not much to talk about other than just
talk about his comments from that article and also that video.
You go ahead because I don't have much to say on it until we see No Time to Die.
Yeah. Well, he gave a big a lot of people have said, and like he's talked about it once or twice in interviews, that like playing James Bond is not always something that's been super enjoyable for him. Particularly the most famous of which was telling Sam Mendes he's not running anymore is the big one. Like I'm not running. It's hard enough for me to like stay in that kind of shape at my age. That's
a good point. Like
I'm not sprinting.
I'm not getting any younger.
But also, that's not true. Watch Spectre. Watch Skyfall.
He's jumping off buildings.
He runs
Spectre.
in the movies, but I think he was just like, can we just try to like find a way? So like,
leave it to Cruise.
I feel like
he'll run for you.
Or like someone asked him like if he's gonna play another one. He's like, I'd rather shoot myself in the
head. I remember that. I'd rather shoot myself
like,
in the head.
I feel like people kind of just take him out of context a little bit because he gave that speech to everyone about what playing James Bond has meant to him, and he got really emotional or whatever. And all I can think of is like that guy is real class, and I don't love all those Bond movies.
but like I like 2 of them a lot, and then 2 of them I think are real boring and bad or whatever.
You probably
Quantum and Spectre are weirdly bad, and I don't like
Spectre. I really don't like.
But
I
Skyfall
like,
and,
as I've mentioned before, I like Quantum as an expansion pack to Casino Royale. I think you should just watch them all in one go.
maybe, but I still don't like it.
Because I'm like Casino
The
Royale
villain's
is
a weird French man. I don't like it.
Casino Royale is a 10 out of 10. And then like I'm like, if I had enough energy in me, yeah, I'll throw on Quantum and finish it up.
Yeah, Skyfall I think is great.
Because also Quantum's like really short. It's like almost just like an hour and like 20 minutes.
Well, Quantum was like a thing. It's like a weird quasi thing where they wanted to make Spectre, but they didn't have the right to Spectre,
so they
made
had to keep up with Quantum,
so
and then when they finally got Spectre, they're like, Quantum, who cares?
yeah. Anyway,
Who cares?
but yeah, like 2 of them are great, 2 of them are bad for me.
Yeah,
whatever. But
fair.
it's very clear that he is.
And it took me a while to come around to Skyfall because at first I was like, Skyfall's overrated, and now I'm like, no, dude, that movie's rocks.
Great. And he plays a like it's very clear like playing James Bond has meant a lot to him, and that dude's all class, man. Like I've never heard a bad word about anyone working with that dude. All of his movies. He's good in all of them, even if I don't like him or whatever. Like in Logan Lucky, he's great. Knives Out, he's great.
Yeah.
That stormtrooper he plays in Force Awakens is great. Like he's good, man.
He's a solid actor. I was thinking about a while back. I watched Road to Perdition for the first time.
He's great in that.
And
he's
that
such a
was
slimy fuck.
He's so disgusting in it, and I'm like, that's a movie where they take 2 of the most handsome actors, Daniel Craig and Jude Law, and make them into scuzzy comic book assholes.
Yeah, it's true.
Jude Law looks like
I
a
thought you were
rat
gonna say,
in that movie.
I thought you were going to say Daniel Craig and Tom Hanks.
Tom
I'm like,
Hanks. Now, Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks has a distinctive look, but he's not what I would call conventionally handsome.
He never has been. But Jude Law looks like a rat monster in that. And I'm like, that's amazing that they did
He's
that.
overly skinny somehow, but he looks exactly the same.
He's like, I just take pictures.
Yeah.
But yeah, Daniel Craig's a total coward in that. And they like make his ears twice as big. He looks like a Dick Tracy villain. And then not too long later, he's amazing.
There's a great part where Stanley Tucci calls him a baby who doesn't know his thumb from his dick.
Yeah, baby who doesn't know his thumb from his dick.
It's my favorite insult.
So good.
But yeah,
watching
that guy's a great actor,
Yeah,
and
he
like it was nice seeing him say goodbye to all these people he's worked with, and I'm excited. Carrie Joji Fukunaga gave an interview about it as well, and said like he was like, it might be the best time I've had working on anything, even better than True Detective, because apparently Nick Pizzolatto has too much power on True Detective.
He does, and apparently Nick Pizzolatto ain't a lot of fun to work with.
Yeah. Well, I've heard conflicting stuff on that, but like,
but also Fukunaga is very much like, I imagine he's just very much like, I like my own space. I like what I'm working with.
Yeah,
just stick with what I'm
doing.
Well,
apparently it became less like him and Pizzolatto were partners and more like he was his boss. Pizzolatto's a good writer.
He's a great writer,
and like he's a good producer or whatever. But like, you know, you're partners. You're not his boss. Or
he's a
whatever.
director. Limited directing. I wonder how much that had to do with Jeremy Saulnier only doing like the first episode of season 3 and then just like later. Because if Jeremy Saulnier had stuck with it, I really love season 3. But
I've only seen 2 episodes of it.
I really love season 3. It's very different, and its closure is very different. It's almost anticlimactic on purpose.
Yeah,
and also like it's Arkansas. It's like I know these places, so there's a sense of familiarity.
I only knew a couple of the places.
I've been to a few of those places.
I was like, where is this? Is Arkansas? Where's that at?
It's all up in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah.
It's all up in Fayetteville.
That's probably why.
But Woo Pig Suey. But yeah,
female James Bond.
Yeah.
People said that
completely threw that out of context.
Yeah.
When I think this is where this goes back to, was it Amazon that has acquiesced MGM?
Yeah.
And United Artists, and they got Bond.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, this is a double-sided sword, because now they get to have Bond stories with all the, we should have a woman, we should have a person of color. They're like, yeah, we'll get to do that for this series, but never an actual movie.
Yeah.
My only stipulation for Bond is it needs to be played by an actor who's from either England or from one of the colonies. No American, German, French, whatever. If they're from...
But what if they're like really good?
No.
Okay. No,
they have
Rob.
to be English. They have to be... We've had... let's see. We've had only really 2 Englishmen. A Scot, an Irishman, a Welshman, and a Aussie.
So so it's coming from you first. Must be a white Englishman.
Nope. What if they're from
yeah, no, you're
Jamaica?
right. Yeah, that's
what if they're from Jamaica? What if they're from Guyana? What if they're from Egypt?
America's British colonies.
You know what I mean.
I know.
They gotta speak the Queens.
Henry Cavill will be a great James Bond.
Henry would be a great James Bond. I
everyone
agree.
said-
Jude Law would have been a great James Bond. Sam Neill was almost James Bond.
Some people have said Idris Elba. I think he would be a good James Bond.
I
I'm worried
think
he's slightly too old now.
That's a problem now. They should have cast Idris Elba a long time ago. Elba would have been a 10 out of 10 Bond, but now he's too gray. He would be as old as like Roger Moore in like halfway
he's
through
already
Roger
Daniel
Moore.
Craig's age.
Yeah,
is the problem.
You gotta. Somebody brought up somebody, and I thought it was a really good idea. He's obviously an English actor. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, good.
And I heard that name, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a really good call." Dan Stevens.
Dan Stevens. We'll talk about him more in my recommended.
Okay.
Or well, maybe we will. Anyway, he's from Downton Abbey.
He's from Downton Abbey.
Beauty and the Beast.
He is also.
I'm worried he's a little.
He's David Howler in Legion.
I'm worried that we're gonna be like he's a little too clean cut. I think that people want a grimmer, rougher Bond, which kind of I can see why, but I also am like I kind of want to get back to like a little bit more of like a fun.
I think now that we've had Daniel Craig as this post 9/11 new millennia James Bond.
That's why I said Henry Cavill, because I think he's fun, but he could do like the Mission Impossible movies. He can do like darker and serious.
Yeah,
but
I loved his character in Mission Impossible. I wish that character was around more.
I wish he would come back
because that mustache.
They throw him off of they throw him off a mountain.
Look, he was a bad guy.
Yeah,
he's kind of a bad.
I'm just saying, like,
dude.
there's no way he's alive still.
No. He's not Solomon Lane. He's not coming back.
But he said that like I don't think a woman should play James Bond was the head title,
right? Which is clickbait nonsense. That's
which
not what
I
he
feel
said,
like is kind of the same thing with like some of some people have been digging up like the comments from the guy who plays Shang-Chi and some of his comments or whatever. I feel like they're wildly out of context. The headlines sound worse, and then when you read the whole thing, like, oh, I see what he's saying now.
Yeah,
like
again, going back to what most of this is we don't really read. You read articles.
Yeah,
I try to, but mostly I just catch. Mostly I end up seeing an article headline and then like, is that real? And I should just probably read the article, but I'm like, I don't trust it.
I immediately just go to like what I do. A quick way to check an article to see if it's like to see if you're being like hoodwinked or whatever. Click on the article, go to Control F, type in the headline of the article, and it will go to the thing, and you can find it. And just read
that's
the
a good
full
point.
book.
That's a good way. Yeah.
Anyway, but what he actually said is what we should probably do is create more roles for female like people to have action movies. And also, I read a great article
that are also not just one-off characters that are just going to be because that's
I read a great article that was like, we need to stop making John Wick clones with women because they're boring or whatever, and they're becoming boring in the same way that we have a million John Wick clones for men that are direct to DVD bullshit movies.
That's been like most of Ruby Rose's career. Like, and
ironically, she was in John Wick 2.
Yeah, and I'm like, I couldn't tell you anything else other than like those are
the thrust of the article was what made John Wick great was it was like something fresh and new for action.
Right.
We need to keep pushing.
We need something innovative. I mean, like those Lara Croft movies are apparently good with Alicia Vikander. Yeah. Apparently, like those are good, but no one's really watching them. Like
she only did the one, right?
I thought there were two.
No, there's one.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of the games.
It's all right. It's me and my previous co-host watched it, and we were like, it's okay. It's all right.
It's not Cradle of Life.
Yeah, but
that was a time where someone like Angelina Jolie playing Lara Croft, even though those movies are not great, was still like
it's like a female.
It's an iconic character, and like maybe not iconic for the right reasons.
Yeah,
but
that's his point. Is like we need to create more spaces for women to have not just. I think if he had a chance to say it, he would also say like not just more action roles for women, but like building franchises like this for women.
Right.
Now, what I will say is studios are scared, cowardly pieces of shit.
Right.
They don't want new. They want old and tried and tested. So getting a chance to play James Bond comes with it a certain pedigree and a certainty for the studio that we will get at least some return on this investment.
Right.
As opposed to making a new female James Bond quasi franchise for a lady, and it's an unknown quantity. We don't know if it's going to do well.
Right.
We'll have all these plans.
That's why I was like, oh, that's why Amazon now did that, so they could have these double O's that are all the speculative representations, and they don't have to be in the movies. That's not good. I don't think
Coward's
that's
way out.
yeah, it's a coward's way out to say like, yeah, you'll get your lady in a 2-season
series that only half of you will watch or whatever, and
Yeah.
it will never impact the movies at all. Like,
Yeah.
it's
I mean, at
it's
this
the
point,
Star Wars
like,
thing.
but it's also like at this point, where can Bond go? Like like we're
Back to being a little more fun. Just saying.
back to being a little more fun.
That's why I like this new
I
trailer.
would love if they did Bond as like a period piece. Like they went back and like I think Tarantino had talked about that. Like he was like, I want to do a Bond movie and I want
Tarantino needs to shut up.
Yeah, I know. He needs to shut up. Well, that's a hard thing to do. Like I'd probably find gold underneath my apartment before Tarantino shuts up.
Yeah.
He was like, I would want to go back to the 60s and just do like a period piece. And I'm like, that's a pretty fun idea, actually.
Kingsman beat you to it.
Yeah, that's true.
The Kingsman is coming out or whatever, which looks great, by the way.
It is an era I really like, which is World War One. So I'll be
Rasputin is the bad guy.
Rasputin is bad because of course, fucking Rasputin.
He was the worst. To be
Yeah,
fair.
he really. But also he was just he's just a con man.
But I understand why a woman would be like, well, it's easy for you to say just make new original female things, but studios don't like to do that. And also, not for nothing, a lot of fans don't like that either. Every time an all-woman anything comes out, and it doesn't have to be all-woman, but like anytime like a female-fronted anything comes out, they don't do as well. So I can see why a woman would say, why can't we have a crack at something that's a little more established so we have the financial security that men take advantage of when they're cast in a giant Marvel thing as opposed to a standalone new superhero thing that may or may not be as successful as something else.
And that
like
is
Bloodshot
and that is obviously just due to one, much like talking about the Matrix, it's hard to strike lightning twice when you're in a thunderstorm, because it's like one thing creates a sea change from the Matrix to John Wick, and everything in between has been reverberations.
By the way, I
this.
think The Matrix and John Wick are going to be competing against each other when they come out.
Because there's going to be another Wick movie?
Yeah. John Wick 4 is almost done shooting. Or is done shooting and is being edited.
And like in studios and everything, we're still trying to the problem is like so many people like immediately hop onto, if they take a gambit and say like we're gonna make a female based this, the critic thing from the dummy pool is always they're doing it for representation, they're doing it for
and actual critics don't make it any easier because they'll overly laud something to poke the bear. Like female Ghostbusters is not a good movie, and I saw people giving it like 5-star reviews. I'm like, you're just doing that to like stick it to.
But it's also not a bad movie.
No, it's a whatever.
Yeah, I don't imagine it's going to be any better than Ghostbusters Afterlife.
I haven't seen. I need to actually like watch some of this content because it's all coming out.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But
it's like that's just Ghostbusters with Stranger Things.
It's the black Superman problem. It's what I've said is like, should Superman be white? Probably for me. I don't have a dog in the fight. Some people definitely have it more than me. Like, should James Bond be like a man? His name is James Bond.
Right. It to me,
I saw someone say like the best comeback to this question was like, what are you saying? Like a trans person couldn't play James Bond? Like, well, a trans man is a man. So.
Oh, there you go. But my thinking of it is like
he's a hetero dude who sleeps around with women.
Right.
That's literally what he is, or whatever.
And they dared to venture that when they're like, this is your first time. He's like, who's to say it's my first? And it's like, yeah, Bond can fuck a dude. That's fine. He's a secret agent.
Well, when was that?
That was in Inspector, right?
I can't remember. I know there's that weird like there's
no, it was in Skyfall.
Yeah, there's the gay scene where Javier Bardem tests the water.
And he's like,
the studio wanted to cut that scene.
Of course they did.
And it's Javier Bardem and Daniel Craig. And,
we're just like,
and
no.
Sam Mendes went, nope, we're keeping it. I'm keeping it in. But yeah,
because they were terrified of, God forbid, the opinions of homophobes who are like, my James Bond. You mean a guy who's a secret agent who does whatever he can for Queen and Country, which may include fucking a dude.
That's a good question. That's a good point. My point is,
James Bond is so above it. He's like, I don't fucking care.
yeah,
I'm a drunk serial murderer. I don't care.
I can see why a woman would look at that and be like,
Well, it seems condescending to be like, what do we got for you? You can play a lady James Bond. It's like,
which, by the way, in this next movie, there is a female 007 because he's not 007 anymore.
Right.
So just for the people who are like, when is a woman like, I've always wanted to see more 00s in these movies. Anyway.
who aren't just villains or dead.
Yeah, they're dead. They've been disavowed or whatever.
Right.
So like, I can understand. I hate to be the both sides Andy, but I can really understand both sort of opinions on it. And I agree that like instead of making Black Superman, I'd rather they just picked black superheroes that I already like and that need that spotlight and just put some real weight behind them.
And I don't mind. Obviously, I think we talked about this before with the Black Superman thing. And I don't want to go too far into it again.
No,
where I'm like, I think you can tell a very fascinating story with that from that point of view.
And there is a Black Superman in the DC comics.
Right.
Val Zod is from Earth 2 is the Black Superman.
Because just like a video I watched the other day, and we'll talk about this in Candyman about the Golem, is like all these superheroes.
I don't know what that
We'll get to it. All these superheroes were all created by Jewish men as ways to get vengeance against the Nazis. They are representations of a powerful being, from, even Bob Finger was Jewish, Stan Lee was Jewish. Bill Finger was Jewish. All, and so they were all.
Jerry Siegel and Joel Schuster literally made a Moses. They put him in the basket and they sent him to Earth. Egypt.
And so it's like that representation exists beyond that, but it's still the same story. So that story can exist. It's just, I'm less. The thing is, the problem is the same with like, I'm gonna always be careful. Is the Superman story, because he's an alien from another world where race doesn't matter to Kryptons.
I mean, it matters to Kryptonians.
Right.
Zod does want to genocide a lot of the
right,
races,
but
bloodlines or whatever.
But they're not. It's not in the same context of the world of our Earth.
Yeah,
Zod's not a racist sheriff in a small town.
No,
but if Superman landed on Earth and he looked like an African American, he would get the prejudice of being an African American, and that can tell a story.
He gets double whammied. He looks black, and he's not from.
And he's not from here. Yeah, there's a great movie. I forgot who directed it. Called Brother from Another Planet, and it was this. Post-blaxploitation, rest R.I.P. Melvin Van Peebles. This post-blaxploitation film with, I forgot his name. He's in everything. He's Ray Fisher's dad. Joe Morton. And Joe Morton is a Martian who lands in I think in like Chicago in the 70s, and he looks like a black man. And he joins up with like a group of other guys who are just like, man, you need to be careful about what you say, what you do, and everything around here. And it's this story of an alien from another world who comes down, who looks like an oppressed people. And there are two like jackbooted white stormtrooper aliens chasing after him. And it's this very clear allegory, but it's kind of that same story where he's got superpowers. Like he can control things and everything. And he's like this kind of a Superman. And it's that same story, obviously from a much more like liberational socialist bend.
I think that's great. I think the problem with that is what you're doing is you're taking a character that's supposed to be post-racial and making him overtly racial. That's the weird...
Well, I never really like the term post-racial because I'm like everything is...
Superman represents the apex of humanity, our best intentions, our best, what's the word? Our ability to accomplish wonders. So like he's supposed to transcend those ideas.
Right. And also he's an alien who is not...
How do we get back on Superman? We're talking about James Bond. But I don't have a problem with that. Right. But I know a bunch of white people have a problem with that. Well, and that's the problem.
Yeah. That's the problem.
And then the movie will tank, and then nobody will do it again, and the movie studios become even more cowardly.
What did... Denis Villeneuve said something about like Marvel movies, and they're already going into the posts on Rotten Tomatoes to give Dune like Fs and everything and zeros. Yeah. so stupid.
I saw someone literally
Fans
say,
are terrible.
I saw someone who he was so like obvious in his where
Well,
he's coming
anytime
from.
they
he was
use-
typing and he was like, man,
Anytime they
this
use
movie
copy
sucks.
paste is
Denis
a-
Villeneuve needs to like watch Marvel. They have a great way of balancing drama and humor and blah blah.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're not even trying. You're
Because
saying
he
the
said
quiet part
the
loud.
word copy paste, and so anytime you see those and they say copy paste, you could just see the seething. And I'm like, this film is gonna be
Something
so
I
good.
have literally echoed or whatever in a much more nuanced way. If like it's one of those, man, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I want more female action movies, but I want more female action movies that are literally female centric.
Well, that's one of the things.
Which deal
Isn't
with the
Phoebe?
problem that
Isn't Phoebe Waller-Bridge worked on the writing for this for No Time to Die?
I can't remember. I know Cary Joji Fukunaga
Is directing
one of
it.
the guys
Right.
writing it or whatever.
And I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge was brought in, and she's awesome. She did Fleabag.
she's done a lot of stuff.
yeah.
I just can't remember. But my point is like that. Like the Tomb Raider movie, there's a scene where she has to kill a dude. I've said it a million times, and it's a great scene because he is the person she's fighting is more physically strong than her. He's got like 45 pounds on her, easy, and she has to find ways to fight this person who is probably a more strong combatant. That is a thing that only a female action hero would ever have to do, and it makes it that much more boss that she kills him.
Right.
Because she literally beats a stronger opponent with skill.
Right.
That is a thing that like only like, and I'm not saying like, you know, when you fight a guy that's like 2 inches taller than you and has like 15 more pounds than you, that's also probably takes skill or whatever, but it's not nearly as drastic. My point is like, I think I want more female action hero movies. I want more action movies in general, to be honest, that are a little bit more
that's the problem. Is also
original.
just right now all the genres have been kind of like reduced down to a straw because the only things that are in theaters right now are big tentpole like studio movies, and no one's just making things anymore.
Yeah. Well, there's
Kinda
gonna be-
sucks.
Well, there's going to be a boom when all these movies hit, and they're
Yeah.
like, we don't have anything. We got to have green lights, some new
Yeah,
stuff.
get some
now.
things out there.
But I want to see action movies, especially ones that have women, that have to find more interesting ways of doing it than just being like,
and
I like
and
the
I
comic
don't- and I-
blonde, but it's
yeah.
just female John Wick.
Right.
And after a while, that is a
And
diminishing
I don't
return.
want I want a character. This is why I really like Florence Pugh's performance in Black Widow, is because she was affable and funny and but also vicious when she needed to be.
Yeah.
I want a character that's, because I feel like whenever they're like, we got to make a female action character that's a little more humorous, it goes into like the Sandra Bullock thing where all of a sudden it's a comedy.
Yeah.
How about we
and the
try to
flip
make a
side of that
character
is they
who's like
make
a
it-
John McClane who's a woman?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a joke. That's the thing. They don't take it
Well,
seriously.
ironically, those movies turned into jokes in a lot of ways.
Right. Well, they were big hits, you know, but at the same time,
In
like
the first
it's,
movie, he fights a guy with his fist. By the fourth movie, he's launching cars at people in
Right.
airplanes and stuff.
but you get what I'm saying.
You know,
A
exactly what you're
grounded
saying.
thing.
You either get action comedies with Melissa McCarthy,
Right.
or you get like a brooding man, but who is a woman that has boobs or whatever. Like,
Right.
They turn her into John Wick.
It becomes a stoic, like emotionless thing where the world building becomes something more, and I'm like, I couldn't care.
Yeah.
I couldn't care. Like you gotta find something more interesting to do.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and talk about our movies. So the Candyman.
Yeah.
Directed by Nia DaCosta.
Who is also going to be doing the Marvels?
Yes, also is doing the Marvels. This Jordan Peele is obviously big named in this enough that people mistakenly thought it was his movie. And it's like, no, it is definitely Nia
Now,
DaCosta's
whenever
movie.
an interesting cerebral black horror movie is made, they're
Yep,
like, it's
they're-
Jordan Peele.
it's Jordan Peele,
And then you
and
look
it's
at the
like-
director, like, nah, that's Jordan Peele. That's not whoever this person is. We all know it's Jordan Peele directing it.
So along with this, you watched the original, right? The
No, I
original.
didn't.
What?
I'm sorry, I didn't have
I
time.
know we would. Be, oh well, then I can't talk about this movie.
You can. I'll watch it anyway.
Okay,
about it. You're not gonna
because
spoil
I
it.
rewatched it. Obviously, let me get over to a couple of notes that I have, but we'll wait on that. First off, it's been a minute since we watched it. We saw it in theaters.
Yeah, I've had a lot of time to sit on it and ruminate.
Yeah, I've meant to probably watch it again, but I really didn't feel the urge to watch it again.
That says something.
Well, but there's a lot of imagery in it that's going to be interesting to talk about. So, what did you think off the bat? We're just going to kind of talk about it.
Well, I struggle with I struggle between like 2 points when it comes to like this movie. Let me answer your question with a question. What defines a good horror movie? I feel like there's a good
Jesus
answer. I feel like
Christ.
there's a good answer to this. What should you walk out of a good horror movie feeling? Like when you want to walk out of a good comedy, what should have happened?
You laughed.
What should happen when you walk out of a good horror movie?
Well, the way I look at nope, I'm just gonna. You should be scared or thrilled. You should be thrilled,
Or a mixture of both.
right? Different versions of horror movies either leave you with dread or the feeling of you just got off of a carnival ride.
Yeah.
Like whoa, like Final Destination and slasher movies should make you be like whoa. Ari Aster movies should make you be like,
Jesus Christ.
oh.
Yeah.
I've read a couple of horror novels
it's
recently,
like
and
it's
those
like
kind
the
of
Kinsey scale. You're like totally hetero, or you're totally homo, and it's like it's totally or it's totally yeah, and it's like it's a sliding scale in between those things. It's yeah, you're right. There's a lot of good things I have to say about this movie, but the thing I keep coming back to is I'm not scared. And I just can't get past the fact that I'm just not scared. Now, I'm a tough crowd when it comes to horror movies because I've been spoiled by the best ones. And like I watch
You and I both.
Yeah, like
we're both horror aficionados. You know our shit.
There's things that I love in a good horror movie.
My skeleton badge of honor.
My jack-o'-lantern or whatever. But no, like I love a good horror movie. And there's certain things that I like about themes that I like in my favorite horror movies that really hit home. Like fear of the unknown is a big one for me. That's why I love movies like The Descent or whatever.
Which I've been meaning to watch that one.
Dude, it's so worth it.
I think I want to watch that soon.
The only thing that like I can say bad about it is that like it reaches once the big once everything hits the fan, so to speak, it becomes a little too much of a bloody gore bath, and it kind of loses that tension. But it's still, it's fucking like Neil Marshall, dude. That guy knows how to do some horror movies. And I love Fear of the Unknown. I love good use of gore and violence. Like I was watching like that movie Freaky with Vince Vaughn. The body.
Oh, I've heard that's good. I've heard that's fun.
It's all right. I had a good time with it.
Yeah.
There's some good kind of interesting kills in it, but I felt that it was so PG-13ified that I was like, we're missing something here. You can't do body switch comedy and a horror movie, but skimp on the horror.
There was something
American Werewolf in London is a perfect example
Yeah.
of how to do the comedy but stick the horror.
There's a whole dream sequence in an American Werewolf where a bunch of zombie Nazis come in and murder a family, and it's just
anything
the
to
special
do with it.
effects team showing off.
Yeah,
and it's
probably
just
John Landis is
it's
Jewish, I think. So like,
well, Landis was probably just like, hell yeah, I want to do that. I'm kind of like a rogue. Like I'll throw some crazy shit in there.
well, even like the werewolf kills are
Yeah,
scary,
they're brutal.
and brutal.
I forgot like a dude just gets his head ripped off. I'm like, oh yeah, that's
and you
right.
see their corpses, and they're all like horribly
Yeah,
lacerated.
I forgot the actor, but his buddy who just
slowly turns into a skeleton.
just degrades through the whole film.
But like this movie is not this movie is not a comedy movie.
No, it's
But
very
this is
serious.
a straight horror. So if you're saying like it's a horror movie, I need to be scared. And the thing I kept coming back to is I'm just not scared. I have nice things to say about it, which I will say in a little bit when you talk after you talk. But like I'm not scared, and that means by definition I have to knock it a little bit just for that. It's like walking out of fantasy, being like, I don't feel like a sense of fantastical wonder, like I was taken to another world.
Yeah.
Or when I'm watching science fiction, I'm like, there's not enough science fiction-y stuff like spaceships or robots or like other things. It doesn't have to be like that overt, but like I should feel science fiction is just the fantasy.
You should
of
feel the
future.
genre.
Yeah.
You should feel it like even if it's something that is more message related, like for some reason the movie Moon came to mind, Duncan Jones's Moon, which is a great movie, and it's very much it's a science fiction movie, but it's pretty well contained in itself.
Yeah.
It's got a robot, it's got a Kevin Spacey bot, and you know you gotta change that. You gotta change that exe into a new voice.
There's like the two kinds of horror movies, two kinds of sci-fi. There's like Guardians of the Galaxy or like Valerian and the City of a Thousand.
Well, high fantasy and like it's like high
Ex
fantasy and low
Machina.
fantasy, and then there's like hard sci-fi and low and like fantasy sci-fi. Yeah. Your Star Wars versus
Ex Machina,
the Expanse or something like that, which is a little more grounded.
Speaking of which, that new show, the Foundation, looks pretty good.
Oh, the Asimov Foundation.
Yeah,
Asimov's
Lee Pace
always
is in it, and Jared Harris is in it. Looks good.
Well,
There's a bunch of like huge.
Jared
visual
Harris is
effects.
also in The Expanse.
Oh yeah, he is. He's always playing like a leader of rebels or something like that.
I like it. I'm
I do
always there
too.
for it.
Yeah. I feel
Or he's
like
playing a sad British man in Mad Men.
yeah. I feel like at some point, like I have to knock it for just not being scary. So I'll let you talk now.
Yeah, it's not scary, and I wonder how much of this, and we'll talk about it. This is a film. This is one of these films, kind of similar to when we talked about Promising Young Woman, where it's like, I wish we had a woman here to talk with this movie. I wish we had a black guest to talk about with this movie, because that's what this movie is about.
Yeah,
is that
it is.
it is a more of a message movie.
We'll find a black person, grab one off the street, and sit him in the chair.
What do you think about
God.
Candyman?
Oh, it's all right. Who are you people? I leave now.
And I think that that's something where it's like, and there's a couple of reviews, and I'll get to them later if I can find them, about that, about what this movie is. I want to
feel
talk real quick.
I feel like the message of the movie cuts against the movie making of the movie.
And I agree.
We're like,
now,
we
I
are
think it's a
trying to-
message, especially given that it is an update in the same world of a story from 30 years ago, where it's like, hey, 30 years have passed, and thematically, not much has changed. What does that say about
It's an
things?
interesting message, but you forget to make a scary horror movie while doing it.
And it ends up being the scary horror movie stuff. The violence and things happening seems kind of very sort of like, that's not really impactful.
The violence is impactful in a weird way because the kills, and this is my first good thing. They're very interesting, intuitive. Like the kills could have been a little bit more lackluster, but like the way people die are often kind of very interesting. And like there's a guy like getting dragged by a hook that's not there or whatever. Or like they're very stark, or they hit really well. They're really cool kills. I could have done with a lot more of them, and I could have done with it not being so reserved and like hiding some of it is
Right.
a lot of it that I kind of felt myself. There's a big shot that you and I both remember where a woman is like, there's a big camera zoom out.
Yeah.
As a woman is killed and hovering in the air.
And then like thrown against a window and
Yeah.
everything. It's pretty dope. That's
And
pretty cool.
But I was just like, I could have done with like 90 more of those.
Right. And that's the thing is like, is Candyman a slasher character? Because,
Kinda.
well, he kind of is. And this goes back to the original film where there were two other films after it. We talked about this. You and I talked about it after seeing the movie.
Yeah.
But Candyman usually does not join the pantheon of your Jason or Freddy or even Pinhead or Chucky.
He's the thinking man's.
Because he is, the closest thing he would be to any of those is like either Pinhead, probably, because like he's an intellectual creature.
He's almost like a vigilante in
yeah.
a way.
Well, and
that
this,
is-
but this is so specific to this movie. The original Candyman is a kind of different character, but so what I like about this one, what I like about this film, is one I like when I first saw the trailers for it, and I'm like, oh, it's about a guy kind of turning into Candyman or something. It's Yahya Mateen, like his body and mind and soul are being destroyed and replaced. I was like, whatever. I don't care for possession stories. I think that might be one of the strongest things about it is
I
because
agree.
it plays it off so well. And then all the while as I'm looking at it, my brain is going into like,
what's the lore?
what's the themes and everything? And I'm like, oh, the theme of a man, a black man observing the history of racial violence and becoming so obsessed with its continuance that it starts to change him into something. And other than that, I've had to kind of look at what other people have said, particularly black critics, and their negative feeling towards it. And I've been like, okay.
Have there been a lot of that?
There's been a few. There's been some pretty strong suggestions about that.
What's
and
the critic like? I didn't even look at the Rotten Tomatoes number on it or anything like that. Like, do people seem to be liking it? I bet it's high. I bet it's like
it is.
80s, in
It's
the
got to
80s.
be up there. Let me find that real quick and then see if I can find, because the article that I mostly wanted to read from is now hidden behind a paywall through Vulture, and so I can't read that one.
Vulture.
But it was one of the first things I read, and I found it very scathing. And it's from a black critic who was just like, this film feels so shallow compared to what it is. Hey, Kyle Kaminsky. It currently holds
An 84%.
84%, 73 audience score. Yeah, that holds it up to being pretty well.
That feels right.
Let me see if I can find.
But I bet most of those reviews are middling positive reviews. I bet you they're not like, this is amazing.
Right. It's not as obviously people are making comparisons to the vibe of something like Jordan Peele's films, which were phenomenal.
It does have kind of a similar vibe.
Yeah.
Like I'll give it that.
It's got that.
But I think
Yeah.
I think that's more inconsequential because Jordan Peele has only made 2 movies.
Right. But those movies have kind of changed the landscape of like horror. Like it's you know what? I can't find this. I was gonna have this set up. My apologies. A little tired today.
Yeah.
But so I had to take those in mind. It does. For one thing, I do think it feels a little overlong, and there's so many characters and so many points of view that we're jumping around, either between Mateen's character, the lead, his girlfriend, between just this other character that he meets that ends up being pretty important and kind of an interesting take. It just ends up going all these different places, and
Some of which I really like.
some of it which I really like, but some of it I wish got revealed earlier, particularly with
Horror remake is so busy being smart that it often forgets to be scary. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
and the one that I was looking at
Strong
and
flavor with a sour aftertaste.
is
another
I don't. Yeah, the one I really stood out for me was from. Oh my goodness!
we don't have to like talk about.
We're not
those,
talking
but
about it
like,
fully. It's just
a
I
lot of
want
these
to keep it in
negative
mind. So
reviews-
it's like it's from Volt.
A lot of these negative reviews, I'm just saying, are like they're very like they kind of are touching on like a lot of the problems that I had with it in the beginning. Candyman grapples with the horror of selling trauma.
Yeah, the person I'm looking for said Angelica Jade Bastien.
Most disappointing film of the year so far.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what she said about it. Soulless didactic reimagining. And so that was one of the first ones I read.
Gilding
was
the
that.
lily a little bit. I don't know if it's that bad.
Well, and it's mostly just.
I don't even know if it's bad at all. Actually, like I'm just like,
Oh, I do like this movie, and I would like to watch it again, and I think we should get into it.
Yeah.
Because now it comes to a lot of the imagery in it and what it has to say about what the film is trying to say, which I'll say I agree as thus far as because Candyman, the original film, the original Clive Barker character, the original film that
Like
he
Clive
didn't
Barker.
direct.
I
He didn't
did- I
direct
did-
it, but
yeah, I like Clive Barker. I need to like get more.
Clive
into some of
Barker's
his stuff.
great.
Yeah,
Clive Barker's awesome.
I've read a few little things here and there. I watched the Midnight Meat Train not too long ago. And
Yeah.
This is a nuts movie.
If you haven't rewatched Hellraiser, definitely worth a rewatch. Hellraiser is one of the best horror movies ever made.
Yeah.
It's dope as all get out. Love them pinheads.
I'll talk about some for a movie that a lot of people say as, in quotes, smart. There are some things in it that I was like, that's clever, but I feel like that was only done for the director to pat herself on the back in a way. For example, a snooty art critic criticizes his exploitation of black pain in one of his paintings or whatever, and says it's derivative. But the entire scene in and of itself, like not necessarily metaphysically, but thematically, is like the entire theme is he is an artist who really likes to talk about the black experience or whatever in his work, and then he takes it to a big art gallery in a pish posh city where it's mostly white people, and a snootier rich white person comes in and critiques it and says it's derivative. Like there's a weird hypocrisy push pull in the scene that I really liked. And when she dies, it felt like a weird sense of karmic justice. And when his piece gets someone killed.
Right.
He doesn't know that at the time.
Right.
At the time, they think it's just a weird coincidence. She has him come to her apartment and
To be like-
and praises him.
Right, because now it has
Because now it's
has
got
value.
cachet
Right, it's
or
got
whatever.
meaning. It's got value.
I appreciate the themes. I appreciate the little sort of the storytelling symbolism, if that I can use that. I think that's all really clever. It's just not scary.
Right, and from
Her
what
death
this
is pretty cool, though. I'll say that.
and for what this critic was saying,
Oh, that's not. That scene does have one of the few scares that I liked. Is he sees the Candyman
in the mirror. He sees
and then when he turns around, he sees it behind her,
Right.
or whatever.
There's a few of these little image things that are really. I like the way. What stuck with me is the way that they make the Candyman float. He's just kind of like floating. It's like
creepy and
it's
scary,
creepy and
yeah.
it works. I like that.
But it's too few and far in between.
Well, and it's also too crisp. It's not. It's not dirty. It's not VHS quality. It's not stylized.
It's in a weird way. Like I'll get to it later. Actually,
Yeah, it's not very stylized. It's very straightforward in a lot of. Though there's some really great imagery.
Yeah, but I think we talked about that after the movie. Is like when he kills people, he doesn't seem to really like. He doesn't gild the lily. He doesn't want to make your death overly extravagant. He's just here to kill you.
Right.
Like-
well, it's also we find out that this Candyman is not the original Candyman. Candyman has now become this force, this kind of has now become this thing that has transcended both a single man.
Yeah, a lot of the Candyman we see in the movie are different Candymen.
Or it's just the one. Is just the one guy that comes from that one guy's past.
Yeah.
The
guy who-
Coleman Domingo's character, who's like, hey, I work this laundry, but he's got like this trauma related to like being back in the 60s
Well, I thought
or 70s.
it was the guy from the who passed out candy to the children.
Yeah.
That guy.
But he's the kid. He's the kid who
Yeah.
sees him and accidentally gives him away to the cops.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
And he grows up and is just like, nothing, everything, I gave him up and we need Candyman. And that's kind of like the big thing about
I
this
forgot
movie.
he was the kid. I forgot about that.
And I think the big thing about this movie that makes it unable to just be a horror movie is that it is so much a film post BLM.
Yeah.
It is
It's
very
hyper aware.
yeah, it is very political. It is very coded in the politics of itself. And I think it succeeds pretty well on that kind of very, very clear level. The nuances in it, as a white guy are not my place to really. That's a big thing about it as I started thinking about this movie a lot. Like, there's a lot here that's not my place to critique other than just like what I can see, because it's like that is a huge, bigger thing going on because
Do you have an example?
well, just talking about the whole thing about the pretentious artist thing and like the fact that the film kind of frames this kind of nouveau rich gentrification in a way that's like I'm trying to put it almost seems insincere at times. At least that's what I've read. And what it's like it feels like we can throw this under the bus from this idea of artistry, and it kind of and it's and then have these like karmatic kills after it, and it feels like this doesn't feel
Some of the kills aren't karmatic. Some of them are just people who just said it.
well. And that's the thing is like
And like that's the weird thing is like Candyman
it almost
at the
feels
end of the movie defines himself as like you knew the speech too because you were saying it next to me like as like he is a answer of justice in some sort of way. That's where like he kind of is vigilante-esque where he answers some sort of karmic crime committed by someone. But some
isn't-
of these people just say it and he just like the teenage girls are.
But that's one
assholes,
of one of the cases in this movie that's so clear, and I think that's where some people have found it so obvious.
Although not for nothing, that guy's got a great voice.
Yeah,
Tony Todd.
Tony Todd is amazing.
It's got like it's this so baritone and
What is
gravelly.
blood for, if not for shedding? He's not a vigilante, though. That's the thing.
I know I said vigilante.
But no. This movie would make that out to be. But if we go back to the original film,
I know.
he kills whoever
Yeah.
introduces him. In this movie, aside from the laundry guy's sister who gets murdered in there, he only kills white people. And it feels, because there's that scene where all the teenage girls are there and the one girl that leaves is Asian. the one person of color leaves.
Well, she didn't say it though. She was in the stall, right?
No. There, when all those teenage girls came in and they started doing the Candyman, the one girl is like, "I'm out of here," and leaves before he arrives.
Oh, yeah. Well, she didn't say it though. That's why she didn't kill
But
her.
that is also clear that they wanted it
yes.
to look like the only people that he was out to get were white people.
Yeah.
And that feels so on the nose for what this movie ends up being, where it's just like, the biggest emotional catharsis of the film in the end of the film is Candyman kills a bunch of cops. Like it's very obvious. Like that's very clear. It's like he is now this spirit of vengeance.
I have a critique of that scene, but I have it. It's the opposite of what you probably think it is, but I think it should have been a lot more.
So this goes back to what
Not necessarily more cops, but like that was like our climax, and it was 5 seconds.
Yeah, well, and it's also
It's really cool. The shot of him going around the car and the swarm of bees is around him. Like that's so fucking boss. Like it looks great.
And then I was like, halfway through the movie. That was the point where I was just like, where you're like, what's up with the bees? And I'm like, hopefully it'll talk about the original Rubidoux, the original. And then they do, and I'm like, oh, okay. And that's earlier when I was talking about superheroes, and I was talking about all these Jewish writers who create all these superheroes as a reference to the Golem. And the Golem is a classic Jewish mythology story of Rabbi Lowe in Prague in the post-Middle Ages. And, anti-Semitism is on the rise. And so what he does is he uses Kabbalah, he uses Jewish mysticism to create a man from clay and put the name of God on his tongue and on his forehead as a defender of the ghetto. And so that's what a golem is. A golem is like now it's kind of.
I knew what a golem was from like D&D. So like, is it that? Is that what it is?
It comes from that same concept. Yeah. Someone makes a good point that Ben Grimm from the Fantastic Four is very clearly a golem.
Yeah,
because he's literally the most Jewish character in Marvel, and also is a man made of rock.
Well, I would argue that Magneto is the most Jewish character.
Well, he's a Holocaust survivor also.
I mean, yeah.
But I don't know if he's practicing.
That's a good point.
Yeah, no, Ben Grimm is a practicing man of faith.
Probably, yeah.
I've seen him with the hat and everything, and he's breaking the glass and all that, and attending bar mitzvahs. That being said, what this film ends up doing with Candyman is he ends up being a golem for the urban ghetto. He ends up being this, by the end of the film suggests that the dispossessed black communities need a mythological character like Candyman in order to
strike fear into their oppressors.
Strike fear into the oppressors. And this is nothing new in even back during times of slavery. And I don't mean to go immediately into like social justice talk and everything, but like this
we'll get to more in the movie.
This is present in it. The Haitians would use voodoo and witchcraft and things like that to scare the whites because they didn't understand it and it gave them power over them. And this kind of feels like that, where it's like when I was growing up, as I told you before, growing up in the 90s, when we're talking about all these different spooky movies and everything, I remember hearing so much about Candyman from my African American friends. To that thing, it's like to the point the movie almost makes you laugh at how many times a black character be like, "Don't do it. Don't do it." And the only people who are foolish enough to do it are all these oblivious white people.
Yeah.
And that's where the movie starts suggesting on itself to the point where I can't take it as seriously because the movie feels like it's nudging me compared to what the original Candyman is, which is this gothic horror romance almost. And I watched it again recently, and it's spooky and really good, where Virginia Madsen is an interloper, where she's like, I got to follow up on this case. And it ends up, she gets accused of all these crimes that Candyman is committing and all these murders because he's like, I want you to join me. Say my name, accept me, and she's like, I can't do that. And then she's just found with all these dead bodies until she ends up getting imprisoned and everything. It's like watching this poor woman end up being destroyed by interloping on the myth. But it feels so specifically a myth as opposed to a much more obvious story about racial injustice. That feels like the subtext of it. This is the text of this Candyman.
Yeah.
While in the original, that's subtext.
I can easily see people who would watch think, oh, of course the big finale is our black anti-hero kills a bunch of corrupt / racist cops.
Right.
Or whatever.
There's no indicating that it's just cops at that point. It's just like they shot him, and all that, and it's clearly, and of course that line that he says when he has, probably should know, the other lead character, his girlfriend in it.
I can't remember her name either. I know who you're
is
talking about.
Brianna, played by Teyona Paris.
Yeah.
Who's quite good. The problem is like the narrative just jumps between her and him so much that you're just like, it's not equalized. And the role of protagonist gets handed off, and it just feels like, oh, chapter 2, story.
This is why I criticized the movie for being too short as well. It's a short little movie. It's like 90 minutes.
But it feels to me longer, and yet it doesn't land its character stories.
I think I would have liked this movie more if it was longer and we spent more time with the tragedy of, because I really feel like Yaya's character, what's his name? Do you have his name?
Anthony.
I feel like Anthony,
because Anthony is a character who is in the original Candyman. He is the baby that Virginia Madsen sacrifices her life to save.
Yeah, and I feel like the story with him should have been more tragic. It is tragic, but I feel like when we reached the end, I was like, I don't feel nearly as profound a sense of loss as I would like to. The thing I like more about a horror movie, it's a great example of this, is Green Room. The thing more I like about in a horror movie is getting it really attached to a group of characters and then being like really bummed when they bite it.
Right.
That's a good feeling.
Yeah.
Not a good feeling, but for a horror movie.
It's a successful feeling in a horror movie where you feel emotionally attached to the characters. There's a place for that. Like, obviously, if I watch like Final Destination, I don't want to be emotionally attached to these characters. I want to watch them die.
In a movie like this, I want to feel the tragedy. In a movie like Hereditary, the tragedy is the thing that breaks your heart.
The tragedy is the horror.
Yeah.
Right. That's where Ari Aster's got that figured out, where the tragedy is the horror.
I mean, there's still, the horror is also the horror. But
right. There's still, where your gut has dropped because of human tragedy, and then they're like, don't worry, there are demons too.
hearing the wife, I can't remember the actress's name, from Hereditary.
Oh, Toni Collette?
Yeah. Hearing her scream.
Oh, it's the worst thing in the world.
Like when
it's the fucking worst thing in the world.
It is in and of itself.
It makes you want to skip that whole part because it's just
or
like,
even the scene where not when we actually see her headless half of her head on the ground is also horrible, but the son's reaction is also equally scary. And that's what I wish is like, I wanted his descent into like madness and Candyman-ifying himself to be worse.
Yeah.
It eventually kind of gets there, but it felt.
What it ends up kind of doing is focusing so much on body horror.
Yeah.
And because there are plenty of scenes where like, ugh, because he's picking at his skin, it's almost like he's turning into the Fly at times. Like his body is decaying, and it's like,
the Fly is a good example of the tragedy, is the horror of it all.
Because he's not, Brundle, Jeff Goldblum's character's tragedy is like he's just a regular guy, and then his science fails him, and he ends up tragically becoming a monster. But he's not a monster. He's still himself. He's just becoming a monster.
Yeah, but the monster things start coming out. There's that line is like, the insect kingdom is a brutal kingdom or whatever. And like the things that I might start doing are not something that I'll have control over. And he does. Like he like vomits a guy's leg away or whatever. It's pretty good.
It's a great movie.
It is a great movie.
Be afraid.
So like,
be very afraid.
When I was watching this movie, and we do get to the emotional. I'm jumping all over the place, but I have to talk about it. Like when we get to the end, where the crazy guy, the kid from the beginning. I don't know his character's name.
Yeah, that is Coleman Domingo's character, because. Because all this is still happening at Cabrini Green. They make a really good imagery of Cabrini Green is also a real place too. But they always have this image. This is an image from the original movie of like the sprawling projects, and then you see like the Sears Tower in the distance. You see the downtown city of Chicago there. Yeah. And this still exists, but now this is a gentrified high rise. And there's another imagery I'll get to when he goes back to like the town, like the outskirts where all this stuff is going on.
Yeah. But the guy from the laundromat is essentially on a crusade. Yeah. And his crusade is to create another Candyman.
He has witnessed the trauma of institutionalized racism to the point where he's like, the only thing we need is a savior, and our savior is a ghost revenant slasher. Is the only thing that can save us.
So what he does is he sets up in a lot of ways Anthony to become that.
Yeah, he
Although
gaslights
I
him
do
into.
kind of like the idea that
but also his own obsession takes him into it as well.
yeah, but I do like the idea that Anthony was always going to be that.
Yeah.
That's more tragic, which is why I say I wish they would have stuck that harder.
Well,
Like he could never have escaped it.
I feel
because
like
without this is a kind of an important point. Without that tragedy, it is like Anthony is just a pawn for a movie's politics.
Yeah.
But without that, I like the idea that because then it moralizes it. Well, like it's almost good that he's this because he's enacting a sense of justice. But I would have preferred the sense that like, well, all of it is kind of terrible.
Right. This
The
is a
fact
tragic
that your hero
thing.
needs to be a monster
Right.
is in itself a tragedy. But we never quite make that leap. The character makes the leap, and it's a really great scene from Yaya when he starts and he goes, well, there are certain parts of the myth that we have to respect, and he starts sawing through his hand, and you see him. He doesn't scream because he can't. He's like petrified. You hear him go like you hear him like try to scream it out, and he starts to cry.
It's
really good.
It's the Jordan Peele silent scream.
Yeah.
It's in every one of his movies so far. Is a scene where a character tears are bowling down their eyes and they're just staring like a Kubrick stare.
Yeah. It also reminded me of Haunting of Hill House when her husband has an aneurysm or whatever and just dies, and she sees the bent neck lady, and she sees him and she's trying to help him, but she can't because she's like has sleep paralysis or whatever.
Right.
It reminded me a little bit of that. But I was like, that tragedy, while good,
There's Mike Flanagan being a great.
Yeah,
I've been meaning to watch that Midnight Mass.
Oh, I didn't know. Does he have a new thing out? I didn't
That's
know
his thing. Yeah, Midnight Mass.
I thought it was just the Bly Manor was his most recent thing. But I really wish that the movie would have emphasized and stuck his tragedies landing a lot harder.
Well, I think
because by the end of it, he turns into Tony Todd essentially, or we see Tony.
He becomes
Todd
part
or
of the because you see that's like he starts as an artist. He starts like having all these intuitive paintings, and they're all of these different black men.
Yeah.
And it turns out like, oh, these are all the victims of lynchings, of murder, of police killings that have happened on the grounds here, this soiled ground for years, starting with, we assume, the original Candyman.
Yeah, because it leads me to the next part is there should have been like 30 cops or something. Just because if you're gonna go for it, go for broke. I don't appreciate like to quote the patron saint Zack Snyder, fire all your bullets when you make a movie or whatever. Don't save bullets because I feel like they were saving bullets for something or whatever. It should have been like 30 cops, not because I necessarily think it's the best.
Well, you also, I guess you don't want it to end up being an action scene because that all of a sudden deflates the intimacy of it.
Yes and no. I'll get to my point. My point is like a larger point is like I don't think that him killing a bunch of cops is like it feels like what was it like Seth Rogen said it. It feels like at the end of Inglourious Bastards when you kill Hitler, but all cops aren't Hitler. That's the problem. Or whatever. I like I would, and also not for nothing, they come in and they like immediately shoot him. I would have loved a scene where right before that happens, he gets to sort of say goodbye or something because he doesn't really get that.
Well, and
Again,
also you don't see him get shot, which I understand why is like also, there's been plenty of criticism about like so many of these horror related things related to black people have also been also tragedy porn of oppression.
Yes.
I
just think the
Lovecraft Country gets that. Was it the other was them or us or not us, but like there's another series that gets that criticism as well, where it's like this just feels like we're just watching black violence and it's supposed to be for drama.
I think I know what you're talking about. But,
and so I think DaCosta was very aware of that and was trying to be like, it's here, but I don't want that to be voyeuristic. I don't want to show another movie where another black man gets shot by the cops. But I also made a movie where a black man gets shot by the cops.
Which is why I said like I wanted them to have a goodbye or something, or just a scene where he gets to say goodbye to her or whatever, because it would make the tragedy that much worse. I would have also liked this is where I'm saying it's like one of my criticisms of the movie Glass was that it's too subtle for its own good. Sometimes you got to know when to go for broke. I would have loved to see,
especially in horror.
Yeah,
sometimes in horror you sometimes have to go wild.
Yeah, at the very end, I would have loved to see where he actually becomes the Candyman and like a scene, a good scene is like they take her to the car and the cop starts blackmailing her or whatever. And as they're maybe like you see a shot from like the doorway of where he was shot, and he's still back in the corner, and the cops are doing it, and he just stands up and like looks over at them or whatever. Like a scene where like you get to build up what's about to happen.
That'd be spooky.
And then all the bees just start, like a bunch of bees show up, and then they just start swarming around him or whatever. We do get that eventually.
Yeah.
And then I would have liked more than just 4 cops because the scene's over too quick. And I would have liked the kills to start being like maybe one of the cops in a way to mock him, like says the Candyman. Says it 5 times or whatever, as like, oh, you afraid of me, Candyman, 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 and like nothing's gonna happen or whatever. And then like
His head just goes flying
everything's fine, and then like one of them gets killed. They hear a bunch of shots going off, and then they all rush in, and we get like a brutal, just bloody scene or whatever. And the scene can like still end the same way or whatever. I just feel like the movie feels like, and there's nothing wrong with this, but it's just a criticism that I felt, feels like it's more concerned with making its point than it's concerned with making the best possible decision for each scene
Right.
or whatever.
Which I think comes to, I'm in agreement about this, about like, it can't go too wild because it is still very contained to its social message.
Sure.
Which is,
But when you end the movie with
you can't make the Tarantino, where Hitler gets dummied into a pile of bullets,
Yeah.
because
Then
we
it's
are not socially open to to like a film where someone's going around murdering cops of glee, and the movie's like, yeah, because we're not quite there. We're all like, yeah, police violence is horrible, but to make it a revenge fantasy with this character doesn't work.
I think that prevents it from becoming a revenge fantasy. I think the revenge fantasy is kind of what it is now.
Right.
Because what happens is he blackmails her. She says, can I see the mirror, please? Because what she does is she summons him knowing that he will kill the cops.
Right.
So it's her revenge fantasy now.
Right.
It's
Which is kind of what the thesis of the film is, which is like
he's still just a tragic monster.
Right.
Like that, then it prevents it from being a revenge fantasy. Because I don't even know for sure like if the movie as it is a revenge fantasy or like revenge porn or whatever. Like,
right, and it's not in the same way that
but I can see how a critic would watch it and be like, it feels a little bit in poor taste to be like the answer to our oppression is like we should just kill all these cops or whatever. It feels like you're skirting on a very fine line.
I think there's a way you can tell that story, but you have to.
That's the part I care about the least in a
Right,
way.
and I think there's a way you can tell that story of just pulpy vengeance. I think of something like we're talking about Tarantino, Django Unchained, where it's like, but the thing is, like,
He's not killing cops; he's killing racist Confederates or whatever.
right? Which they're open season. Everyone, well, mostly everyone, most of the people that matter in the discussion don't mind watching him murder, slave owners. That's cool. That's fine. Murdering Nazis is cool and fine. But in order to pull off something where it's like, we are now realizing the greater social problem of a police state. I just watched They Live the other day. For the first time, I watched John Carpenter's They Live. And that justifies Roddy Piper going around murdering cops because he could tell which ones are evil aliens and lets the ones that are just like humans who have like signed up for the force in ignorance, like, get out of here. You're being used. But at that point, that's supernatural reasoning.
I like that movie. It's all right.
The movie's great. Dour ending. I didn't realize it ended on such a dour ending, but like, and Roddy Piper looks amazing in it. Also, speaking of great voice people, Keith David.
Yeah, he is
fucking
good.
Amazing. That everyone had talked about
Goliath himself.
that fight scene in the alleyway for years, and I was like, holy shit, this is insane.
Yeah.
I think there's two things that it can't that the reason why that ending works, and the reason why I don't think they could be more indulgent in it is because, one, it has to be this kind of thematic thing, and two, it's Candyman, and it's like Candyman's not that character. All of Candyman's kills in the original movie are intimate. They're like one-on-one.
Okay, that's fine. Then make the kills of the cops like more intimate or whatever.
I guess I
when he kills
get
them,
they're tiptoeing.
When the scene happens, he just like dead,
right.
Like it happens so quick that I'm like, I don't say like this is our climax. I'm not savoring.
Well, he does also
any
have
of
that
this
line
horror.
about like it's a reference to the original film. You know, some say I shed innocent blood, and he looks at the comment and says, "Your blood is not innocent." Which, I mean, that just kind of feels like a line compared to the original, which is some say I shed innocent blood. What is blood for if not for shedding? Yeah. And where he's much more like.
Did you feel like it was wagging its finger at the audience? Like you participate in this by watching these movies and by wanting this?
No, I don't think so. I think because I feel like there's a lot of it. I feel like if this had come out at a different time, it is so of the moment. It is so of reacting to this moment in history of post BLM, Trump era, all that. You know, it feels very much of that. It's almost like why the movie was made. Yeah. But I feel like if the movie was liberated from that, I can see DaCosta and Peele having more fun with it. And having it be a little more pulpy. But that's the problem is Candyman's not pulpy. He's very serious. He's a romantic character. He's a gothic romantic character.
I don't even think like fun or like more pulp is not necessarily what I want. I think I just want the horror of it all to be like, there's some moments where they come close because they don't make it silly or stupid. A good example of this is actually a praise wrapped inside of a criticism. The character, his girlfriend, has a dream about her father and stuff. Right. That should have happened way earlier. Well, that's probably way more.
That's all cut stuff too. Like that reeks of edit floor. Like we had to cut that scene out.
But during that dream sequence, when her father jumps out of the thing and kills himself, which is maybe why she's so scared of like all the stuff that's happening, and then she turns to her. Like the doorway to her bedroom, and you see Candyman floating there, and he just goes like, and he turns towards her, and it's like as he's floating, it's real scary, right? And I was like, that was the scariest part of the movie, and I'm like, and it's gone already, and I'm like, I just feel like more of that, and like some not playing around with your kills so much. Like the first kill we get is the man who is having sex with his assistant lady or whatever, and he just like,
which also again feels very. It feels like oh I get it. He's an older man who's with this younger girl. He's gaslighting her into this relationship, and it's scuzzy. And I'm like, at this point, it feels so obvious. It's like some of these characters feel like they're from a slasher movie. And it's like Candyman's not really a slasher movie in theme. Yeah. It's one of my favorite kills in the original Candyman is after all these coincidental murders and everything that has happened, and Virginia Madsen's at the end of her wits, she is taken into like the commissioner's office, and the commissioner is there. I forgot, or is he a doctor? He's a doctor. He's in an asylum at this point, and he's just sitting there like talking to her and everything, and she does the Candyman, looking in the mirror, and then it's silent, and he's kind of looking at her like, okay, and then all of a sudden he screams, and essentially Tony Todd rips out of him. Like he just like rips in his back and like comes out of him like he was wearing him and just like falls away. He's like, you summoned me. And it's like, that's so blunt and dreamlike that it's like, oh, that's
and
something
creative.
And that's what Barker does so well is a lot of his stuff is dreamy. It's all very kind of subliminal.
Which I would argue this
that's like what Hellraiser is like. And this doesn't feel that. This is very
I would argue this movie does
sterile.
have a very sort of cerebrally feel to some of it. But like
but visually it isn't. Yeah. Visually it's another, studio film.
Yeah. Although visually we do have like a 2-minute long opening sequence.
Yeah,
where we
that's
see
a mirror image
down,
of the
and all I can think of is like this movie is 90 minutes long and this intro is 2 minutes of it. And I was like, Jesus, we had so much more time to get stuff done here. But like I guess I don't disagree. Having not seen the original, I guess I understand that. I'm just sort of trying to judge it for what it is right now.
What did you think about? There's one thing I really did like.
That's a creative kill. Right. That sounds cool and gruesome, and but not in a way.
But it's also not super bloody, like because that movie's not very bloody either.
Yeah, it doesn't turn into Final Destination where we're watching for the gore, but it's like it's intuitive. Whereas a lot of the kill, that last sequence, our climax of the movie, which is what it is, feels like there is no. It's just dead. It's not. There's nothing interesting happening for the audience, except for like some cool visual effects of him floating and the visual effects of him swarm with the swarm of bees. He looks like the Pain from fucking
from
Snake
Metal Gear
Eater.
Solid 3.
Yeah, and I'm like, it looks cool. I'm just like, I found myself wanting more. And sometimes a movie leaving you wanting more is good, but when it's just you want more consistently, that means you're not getting enough. Do you want to talk some more about like some more critiques you have, like of actual parts in the movie?
I think there's one last thing thematically I want to bring up, and it's someone brought this up in a review, and I thought like, oh my gosh, yeah. And it's again going with why this movie was made now, and it's the original posters for it were say his name, and that is so they made a point like this is clearly a reference to the hashtag say her name.
Yes, of course.
From like Breonna Taylor and everything. It's
or
like
George Floyd, or
it's like,
Philando
oh,
Castile.
this is very obviously what this is, and it's and I think as a message movie for that, like say 20 years down the line, and people want to look at it. I always look about that in movies, like this movie represents this time period.
Yeah.
I think this will be a really solid kind of film to be like, what was the feeling of a piece of art that's very clearly a populist piece of art that represents this time period. I'm like, well, the Candyman from 2021, is very clearly coded by BLM and coded by police violence.
I actually kind of like that about a lot of movies. I feel like Gone Girl is a good example of like a snippet in time, like how we sort of consumed media.
Yeah, and social media and everything else at the time. Children of Men is one of the ones I always go back to. Children of Men is one of the best movies of the 2000s.
Lord of the Rings,
And,
what it was like, way back then. I'm kidding.
Well, more like what was it like to have an innocent time before everything went to shit? And it's like I felt like a fantasy movie. Then everything, now everything sucks.
So what's the deal with his name? You said it's
well, it further sort of suggests like that's what this movie is about. That's why we picked Candyman, and so that I think that's what some of the criticism I've seen, and I kind of get it, is like Candyman feels like he was plucked from his world to represent this moment, and it's like, what do we got? What do we got for black horror? Candyman. Let's go back to Candyman. Yeah. And I think for the most part, the mythologies we create protect us, and
what
the
does Clive
mythology.
Barker think about this? Has he said anything?
I don't know.
Because that's his baby.
Yeah, well, it was his short story, and it kind of has gone beyond him. I don't know. That's a good question.
I'd love to see what he thinks about it.
I'll have to look into that. There was one scene whenever
doesn't this like, sorry to cut you off, doesn't this like kind of strengthen the fact that this is kind of a revenge movie then? If like I didn't know that the posters were about I never really remembered the posters.
Well, it wasn't even a hashtag. It would just say his name, which is like this double entendre that ends up being very effective to the time.
Obviously this movie is about like
whether that's in good taste or not, It is a black creative crew that put it together of DaCosta and Jordan Peele.
Sure.
So it's like, if that had been done by white folks, I'd be like, that's really tacky. But I'm like, it's not my place to say that because it was their choice to make that political message.
I just find some of the choices more befuddling if we know the movie is like, because I didn't know that. If the movie is that sort of politically
on the nose.
I don't want to say motivated, but like because motivated implies an
agenda?
Yeah, like it
Well,
implies.
it's also kind of like why now? Why now to make Candyman?
Well, I think the why is maybe not nearly as important. Like making Candyman now is because Jordan Peele has been like using his movies to not just to talk about the black experience, although Get Out is definitely about the black experience. Us is not about the black experience, but he's using his movies to put spotlights on black actors and black casts. And things like that.
I would say it is, but in a much more deeper sense in Us.
Okay, I'm open to that argument.
I've listened to some pretty good deeper critiques than and I'm like, oh yeah.
I've heard some deep critiques about like what the underclass means of these clones or whatever, but like I haven't seen like necessarily such a racial
we talked
critique.
about Us before, but that's been almost a year from now.
Yeah. He wants to use his productions to spotlight really talented black creatives and actors and stuff. So like you said, like why now? Well, like why not now? Like he's got the ability to do it. There's a lot of people who love it, obviously, and like it seems like it's the perfect time to do it. And if it wouldn't have been now, it would have been a year past now or whatever. So like, unless you think like like racial relations or whatever in America is somehow going to get better in the next year, I doubt it. So like, I think the why is less important in a lot of ways. I feel like,
But it's more like I understand why.
Yeah.
It's like I understand like this is because
But if
the
it
original
is-
Candyman was, if very obviously, but not loudly in the movie, about racial injustice.
yeah, but this one is like overtly about that.
It can't help but be that because we're now very aware of it.
And I guess I have to sort of take back what I said a little earlier. Is I can see why she would want to walk such a fine line, because
if you fall too hard in either way,
you don't want to be. You don't want the movie to come out and then like everyone's like it's a black separatist anthem, like or whatever. Like you don't want that to happen, but you also don't want to skirt some of the bigger questions about like gentrification or about police violence. So like
to not do it would be insincere, and to not go far enough, and to go too far becomes like, what are you getting?
Well, I think she does go too far, but I think she goes too far in the sense that like she forgets to make the movie scary. I think she is. If someone hears this and disagrees with it, I guess that's fine. I think she's maybe a little bit too concerned with the message and not enough concerned with like me. I should be scared watching this movie, and I found myself begging for anything scary to happen.
And I think that's just what Peele is so good at. Is he could do both. He's very talented enough to be able to do that. And I think,
but he didn't direct this.
he didn't direct this. No, of course, this is DaCosta's
I think
film.
Get Out is very scary.
Yeah.
but it's scarier in a I don't say fun. It is kind of fun to me actually, but like
Well, it's a fun movie.
Yeah, like sink into the floor and then he sinks into the chair. I'm like, that's scary to me.
Yeah, the
Like,
imagery in it and the things he uses are spooky, and it works. And
Yeah.
but because he understands the genre. I don't know if DaCosta really gets the horror genre. She didn't really come from horror.
like there's even a part where the girls summon him. And we really they hide so much of that violence. And I'm really to the point, I'd like to see these girls die, please. I don't want to sound like, I don't know how to say it.
But it's also I feel like everything that's happened to culture is just do we really need to see I wish this could have been something else, because it's like in order to see that, it couldn't have been students in a school, because it's a bloody school bathroom,
Look,
a school shooting.
They wrote the script, not me.
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
it's
in
like
a
they wrote
world-
themselves into these corners where they're like, we can't go there now.
In a
because-
world where, first of all, yes, you can. People will get mad at you, but you can still do it, and you can just say
maybe that's the thing, is this needed to be more extreme.
Well, people get mad at you or say you're highlighting our school violence in a way that's very predatory. No, I'm just this is exactly.
That's also most
this is why-
YA
this is
books
why-
right now.
Yeah, this is why Zack Snyder gets accused of being right wing, because he just goes there. or
And
whatever.
also because
but he does it in a way that,
people glom on to people for foolish reasons and be like, yeah, he's one of us.
yeah, and he's politically he's just like this movie could do the same thing. He's like you're politically neutral. You just hold up a mirror and the people see what they see back. If there's a massacre that happens in a school, this is not the same as Ben Shapiro making a right wing school shooter fantasy. Or
Right.
whatever.
Oh, it's very different. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could say hey, I'm just showing up the world as I see it, and what you feel from that is what you feel.
Right.
But
And it's mostly
don't
just me
call
making
yourself
these
a horror movie and then you hide a big death scene. I
Well, it's like,
was befuddled by that scene.
well, it is a horror movie, but it's a matter of also, you and me just saying this, we're not easily scared by things.
No, and I should always.
And it's also
go back to that.
and violence is not inherently scary. It's how it's done. Like I said, one of the spookiest scenes is when he's just when he's just a revenant, he's just a ghost. That's spooky.
Yeah.
One of the things about for some reason I thought of It Follows, a movie that I don't necessarily really love that much. But that scene of them hanging out in the room and you see that tall guy just come out of the hallway and nothing happens. That's still spooky as hell. And it's because the imagery is scary. It's kind of that, yeah. Or when you see the girl and she's broken in half or whatever. It's oh, that's really stark, and that really stands out. So anytime there's this,
I don't remember that.
doesn't that happen in that movie
It might. I can't remember.
where the girl's on the beach? It's been a while.
I can't remember.
I remember someone with a broken bone sticking out.
It follows. Yeah,
Yeah.
that happens.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. So I think it's also like they wanted to make a populist horror movie. And it's like you got to get some slashing, you got to get some killing.
Populist horror movie. That's like saying I'm going to make a popular superhero movie, but we don't have any like dope action sequences or whatever. It's kind of like,
but also
it's not populist.
But then like you can't be super violent in populist because then it's
I make the opposite argument. Game of Thrones is populist.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's violent as fuck.
Yeah.
So like.
People are getting cut in half.
Like populist does not mean you can't be smart. Dune is a populist movie. Mm-hmm. It is. It's marketed to everybody. It's
a big studio production.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're meant to watch this movie. It's not an indie darling. It's not
like populist doesn't mean so niche nobody sees it or something like that.
Populist it needs to be as broad as possible to the point.
You're trying to get as many people in there,
right.
And it can still be smart. Blade Runner 2049, I would still say it's a populist movie.
It failed on that.
Maybe.
It failed on that being that.
But a lot of populist movies.
It's a movie I love, but it bombed and failed on that.
So you can
and I use that loosely as a way to.
She pulls so many punches, she loses the fight. It's kind of what I feel.
I think that's fair. It feels very. It feels like the loudest thing in it is its cultural relevance and its theme, but the narrative within it, the story simplified, ends up getting muted.
Which is why I say, like, if the movie was longer, if his tragedy was like, what would have been really great is if when she's sleeping and he wakes up and he's above her with a hook. I don't know, like if he has a meat hook in his house, why he would have it, but like maybe he's over maybe he's like drooling and he's like there's bees around him, and she goes like she screams at him Anthony, and he wakes up and he just realized his descent needs to be worse and not necessarily like worse and more tragic where he's losing parts of himself.
Well, and also this is what I was trying to get at earlier is like, did he have to be the baby from before? Did he have to be Vanessa Williams' baby?
See, I like that.
But then that needs to be something that, because I almost forgot about that. Like, I actually think it would have been more effective if he was just some random guy who's just like, I'm curious about this, and it destroys him.
No, that's a good point.
And it could happen to anybody. It happened to Virginia Madsen's character, and even though
random tragedy is worse than destined tragedy.
Yeah, because at Destined, I'm like, well, it's meant to be. Yeah. The tragedy of happenstance.
I'm at war with myself now. Do I like there must always be a Candyman, like there must always be a Batman in Gotham kind of thing, or do I like the scary thing about Hereditary is that it could happen to any family.
Right.
It just
but also in Hereditary there is a conspiracy at play to.
It is her grandmother, but it could have been anybody.
Yeah. The thing is, and of course we get to see Vanessa Williams, who was in the original movie.
Yeah.
But I feel like, because the thing is, like, when we hear about Virginia Madsen's character in this movie, she still can't get over the mythology that now exists beyond her death, where we as the audience know, if you've seen the original, she didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
Candyman did all that.
Yeah.
Candyman murdered all those people.
They live in a world where they think she did it.
Right, because they're like, Candyman, that's bullshit. That's a mythology that came out of nothing. A crazy white woman came in, stole a baby, killed a bunch of people, and then and that happened. But we know the truth and all that. But one of the other things I like about it, and I think we should get wrapping this up because there's not much else to say. This is a very talky movie because there's so much layered in it. I really loved the little paper mache cutout storytelling things. That was really neat.
Nia DaCosta is not a bad movie maker.
No,
she's a good
filmmaker.
Like when I watched,
that's clever.
When I watched the movie, just the whole thing, it kept my attention. But I was just as I was watching it, I felt like the Tenet thing, where I was like, to what end? Where are we going? And then when we get there, I'm like, that's why I say that's why that climax falls kind of short for me. Yes, if you make it into a slasher film or like a Daredevil fight scene, it loses its horror edge. But by the time we've gotten here, I'm like, I'm not scared anyway. We've already lost the horror edge. At least go out with a bang. And I did the finale is kind of my favorite part, but I feel like we either pull our punches or it's not emotionally gratifying. Either make it real tragic or whatever. And also her point of view watching it should be more tragic. Look what's happened to your sweet man that you love so much.
Think about The Fly.
Yeah.
Think about watching that happen.
Watching him brutally kill these cops in ways that are horrible. This is your old sensitive artist boyfriend.
It's sad.
Yeah, it should be sad.
And especially sad because she's like, it's my only option to get out of this horror is I have to summon you and make you into the monster you've become.
Yeah. We don't,
because she's not even sure it's going to happen.
We don't stick that landing.
Yeah, she takes it on faith.
Yeah,
but it's a tragic.
And he doesn't kill her.
No.
Yeah. which feels like, again, like the filmmaker is saying, he doesn't kill black people. He only kills white people.
Right.
Which feels like...
Which he didn't kill Virginia Madsen
Yeah.
originally, but that's he later in the other movies it says it's because she's a reincarnation of the white woman he fell in love with, who he got killed over. Whatever.
That's very Emmett Till. I don't know if I like that.
But well, that's what happened to him in the original. Is like he was an artist. He was an artist who fell in love with this white woman, and then like things went bad, and he was burned to death and covered in bees and all that, and that would led to Candyman.
Oh. I like the bees part and all that stuff.
The original movie's very good.
I
do
believe you.
recommend that one.
I do plan on watching it at some point.
Yeah. But other than that, like,
But watch The Descent before you rewatch it. That's
yeah.
a great descent into madness.
but this is a good movie. I think it's a good movie. It's not one I'm going to revisit. It feels still a little too stale.
I'm so hesitant to say it's a good movie. It's what I will say about it is it's a big swing, and I appreciate, like I always said, I always appreciate ambition over cohesion. Like you can make a very cohesive story that I understand all of, and like I appreciate. It's very well put together, but I appreciate ambition more than I appreciate like, oh, it's a well put together puzzle or whatever.
Yeah.
So like I appreciate the big swing. I don't think she knocked it out of the park.
It's kind of fun because I remember
Maybe it's a base hit if she's lucky and she slid into first or whatever. Or
Goal.
You don't need to slide into first or whatever. But anyway,
I mean, if you didn't hit well, you do in order to take that base. Yeah. But I remember we were saying like we didn't have much to talk about with Candyman. I guess there was a lot to talk about with Candyman.